starting from Douluo, shocking all the worlds. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Period. Chapter 226, Spirit Void Cave. Let's get started. After the elder Myun and Yuding Dongshin finished speaking, everyone was filled with regret after learning the identities of Tang Ge and Yifan Huang's ancient holy body. Now it is not ancient, and the holy body has become a waste body. Even the hearts of the elders of Lingsu Cave, who were still extremely excited, suddenly cooled down, and their eyes gradually became cold when they looked at Tang Ge and Yifan. Just a pity. The dozen or so people present had already been divided up by other blessed lands, and even if Jade Cauldron Grotto regretted it, there was no chance of regretting it. Without any choice, they could only pinch their noses under the threat of Pangbo, reluctantly chose to take in Tang Ge and Yifan temporarily. Fortunately, these elders are gratified that Yifan and his two with ancient waste bodies finally have a little self-knowledge, and they did not rely on the Spirit Void Cave. So wait until everyone else is taken away by the people from various caves. The elders of Lingsu Dongshin rested in the small town overnight, and the next day they took Tang Ge, Yifan, and Pangbo and flew away as magical rainbows. The Lingsu Cave is located in a fairy mountain. Only the land of the mountain gate is full of immortal trees, and the flowing springs and waterfalls are like fairy music. During the period, there are pavilions, towers and pavilions, and the cranes are flying and singing together. Going further in, the clouds and mist are misty, and a huge blue stone can be seen in the haze. The two ancient characters Lingsu are engraved on it, revealing a simple and majestic atmosphere. Yifan and Pangbo had never seen such a fairyland before, and they couldn't help being stunned. Even Tang Ge beside him couldn't help but marvel, thinking that this is really a suitable place for the elderly. The elders next to him didn't know Tang Ge's thoughts, but they were very satisfied with their reactions. After entering the sect, these elders left Tang Ge and the three in front of a short mountain, and left after a brief explanation. After a while, only Tang Ge and three people were left here. On the low hill there are 3 or 5 huts, 2 or 3 bamboo forests, plus a medicine field and a few old trees, but compared with the previous Kyonglaoyudian, there is a big gap. After Pangbo came back to his senses, he couldn't help complaining directly, "Just leave us here like this? It's too perfunctory." "Okay, it's good to have a place to live, why bother so much?" Yifan didn't mind, but felt extremely relieved, and couldn't help but say something to Pangbo immediately. He seemed to think of something, and looked at Tang Ge again, with complicated eyes in his eyes, and said, "Tang Ge, I really didn't expect that the two of us, who had never known each other before this, would have the same physique. It's a pity that such a physique is just a useless waste body in their eyes." "What waste body? I heard them say that it is an unrivaled holy body. So, if it comes, it will be safe. We must have confidence in ourselves." Hearing Yifan's words, Tang Ge smiled and comforted him. Su Shi was infected by his words, and Yifan, who was originally depressed, suddenly figured it out, and nodded with a smile. "You're right, we must be confident in ourselves." On the side, Pangbo couldn't help shivering when he heard the conversation between the two. So gross. Immediately, he left here quickly, began to prepare his own residence, and looked for food by the way, and he started to feel hungry again. Just wait until noon comes. When a 12-year-old boy came here with a food box and a change of clothes, the three knew how difficult life here would be. Lotus root slices, silward, poria cocos, etc. These light foods that are mostly medicinal materials are their daily meals. Not even a little oil, let alone meat. If it wasn't for the 11 or 12-year-old boy who stopped him, Pangbo couldn't help but kill the deer, slaughter the crane and roast it on the mountain. Such dull and boring days lasted for more than 10 days, until an elder who was in charge of newcomers' initiation practice came here. Pangbo and the others finally calmed down, and began to get acquainted with the knowledge of the practice world under the explanation of the elder named Wu Qingfeng. Tang Ge wanted to get the introductory chapter of Taoism earlier, but he didn't mention it at all. He didn't dare to ask, so he could only continue to suffer boredly. On the contrary, Yifan and Pangbo, who didn't know anything about cultivation, listened fascinatedly, like sponges, constantly absorbing all the useful knowledge points explained by Elder Wu Qingfen. From what is spiritual practice to the wheel of life in the human body, from the location of the wheel of life to the importance of a wheel of life to a practitioner. The cognition of the two of Yifan was gradually opened up, as if entering a new world. The aura on their bodies slowly began to change. If they returned to the dunya at this moment, in the eyes of others, this kind of breath is a kind of fairy temperament that does not eat the fireworks of the world. Therefore, if you want to cultivate, the most important thing is to change your mentality first in this way. Before I knew it, 3 months had passed. Elder Wu Qingfen, who was in charge of the beginner's practice, watched Pang Bo and Yifan change little by little in front of him. Now, the calm personalities of these two people and their desire for cultivation satisfied him very much. But when looking at Tang Ge, the elder frowned, and he could clearly feel that the young man didn't seem to be so enthusiastic about the knowledge of practice. Maybe I've given up on it. Thinking of the news he heard from the sect when he came, Wu Qingfang sighed softly in his heart. He didn't blame Tang Ge. After all, it was all up to him to cultivate. If he even chose to give up, what's the use of others talking more? After coming to the short mountain again today, seeing Yifan and the three of them sitting cross-legged on the ground, Wu Qingfang suddenly spoke. After 3 months of practice and popularization, you have a general understanding of the knowledge of practice, but everything still needs to be practiced by yourself. So from now on, in the next 2 months, I will help you embark on the road of immortality and officially become practitioners. Hearing Wu Chenglong's words, Yifan and Pang Bo lifted their spirits, and their faces were filled with excitement and eagerness. Even Tang Ge couldn't help pricking up his ears, and began to become serious. He was looking forward to it in his heart. After waiting for 3 months, he finally got this opportunity as predicted. Although neither Tang Ge nor Yifan joined Lingsu Cave, Wu Qingfang did not avoid them, but generously took out the Tao Jing, which is known as the strongest foundation-building method in the world. Of course, there is actually only the beginning chapter in this scripture. But for Tang Ge, it was enough. So when Wu Qingfang began to explain the Taoism, the system prompt sound appeared in his mind again. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have obtained the Dao Sutra, Lun Hai chapter. When the practice knowledge of Tao Jing Lun Hai comes to mind, Tang Ge just heard the sound of the avenue in heaven, and then his consciousness extended, and he easily felt where his wheel of life was. He even felt that as long as he moved his mind, the sea of bitterness could be successfully opened up in an instant. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 227. I can't hold it anymore, thunder tribulation is coming. The beginning chapter of the Taoist scripture explained by Wu Qingfeng is just an introduction to the Lun Hai chapter, but now with the automatic completion of the system, Tang Ge has directly mastered the entire Lun Hai chapter of the Taoist scripture. This is the foundation-building method to create the strongest sea of suffering. With the help of the system, Tang Ge saved the need to accompany Yifan to go on an adventure to the ancient tomb of the demon emperor, and as long as there is no shortage of resources, he can cultivate to the 4 extremes in one go. Compared with Yifan, Tang Ge's Eucharist has awakened to 19%, and there will be no bottleneck at all in the early stage. It's a pity that there are other people around at this moment, so although Tang Ge has already felt the wheel of life, he still resists the urge to open up the sea of suffering. And after 2 days, before Wu Qingfang could help him open up the sea of suffering, he suddenly offered to leave Lingsu Cave. You want to get out of here? When he heard Tang Ge's request, Wu Qingfang thought he had heard it wrong, and couldn't help but look surprised. Even Pang Bo and Yifan, who were practicing at the side, woke up immediately and turned their eyes to Tang Ge, with doubts and worries in their eyes. Tang Ge ignored Yifan and the two, and nodded to Wu Qingfang. Yes, Elder Wu, I don't think it's useless to stay here anymore, so I want to go out alone to try my luck. Maybe I break through by accident. Take a chance? Accidentally break through? Hearing Tang Ge's reason, Wu Qingfang felt that the other party was simply crazy, or that he was ready to kill himself by abandoning himself. After all, it's so dangerous outside, a person with no cultivation base may not survive a day if he is not protected. It's just that when he noticed the resolute look in Tang Ge's eyes, coupled with the perfunctory performance of the other party in the past, Wu Qingfang didn't persuade him anymore. His expression also became a lot more indifferent. He nodded and said lightly, in that case, you are ready to prepare. The old man will send you out of the Lingsu Cave in the afternoon, After finishing speaking, Wu Qingfang immediately lost the mood to continue teaching the three of them, got up and drove Shin Hong to fly away. As soon as he left, Pangbo, who was full of doubts in his heart, couldn't help but said, Tang Ge, what are you thinking about? Why are you leaving all of a sudden? Even if you want to leave, you have to wait until you have opened up the sea of suffering and have some self-preservation power before leaving. From the excitement and annoyance in his voice, it is obvious that after getting along for a period of time, he still regards Tang Ge as a friend. Moreover, everyone came from the same place, and it was already extremely difficult to rely on each other to survive, and no one wanted to watch someone die. Yi Fan also persuaded, Pangbo is right, although the holy body on our body is difficult to break through, after this period of practice, the strength of our body has obviously improved a lot. Tang Ge, didn't you say you should be confident in yourself? Could it be that you gave up first? Having said that, when Yi Fan looked at Tang Ge, his eyes were obviously full of disappointment. Tang Ge was so far behind Yi Fan's disappointed eyes that he was really helpless. It's just a sea of bitterness. If he wants to break through, he can open up the sea of bitterness in a blink of an eye, and the movement caused by that time may also disturb the entire spiritual void cave. But this is not the world of Douluo. Does Tang Ge still remember that there is an immortal in Lingsu Cave who is thinking about him and Yi Fan? Not to mention, it is also an ancient sacred body. Tang Ge is even more afraid of accidentally hitting Yi Fan. But after all, everyone has been together for a while, and he also regards the two as friends, so in the face of their worries and dissuasion, he still properly showed his strength. Ignoring the puzzled expressions of the two, when Tang Ge walked up to a huge boulder that weighed 10,000 caddies, he hugged the boulder and lifted it up easily. After walking a few more steps, he put it back on the ground. Boom! Accompanied by the dull sound and a tremor of the ground, Yi Fan and Pangbo's originally puzzled expressions were already full of dullness. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, shocked Pangbo, and gained, shock points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Yi Fan and gained 1,000 shock points. Although the shock was not worth much, Tang Ge was still very satisfied when he heard the system prompt. He walked in front of the two with a smile, patted the dust on his hands, and said, the ancient holy body is really powerful, although I didn't open up the sea of suffering, but the power has increased a lot. Brother Pangbo, why don't we exchange ideas? Hearing Tang Ge's words, Pangbo, who just came back to his senses, hurriedly shook his head, looked at Tang Ge like a monster, and said, you have such terrifying strength, you don't even say a word. Yi Fan, you are also an ancient holy body, you can't be as strong as Tang Ge, right? As he spoke, he looked at Yi Fan again, his eyes full of expectation. Yi Fan smiled wryly and shook his head. My whole body's strength has increased a lot, but the gap with Tang Ge is still too big, let alone lifting that boulder easily, even moving it is extremely difficult. If the force of 10,000 caddies falls on a person, who can stop it? Although Yi Fan and Pangbo still didn't understand Tang Ge's decision to leave, they were much less worried before. Among them, Yi Fan persuaded Tang Ge to stay for a while, and after the two of them successfully opened up the sea of bitterness, they left the Lingsu Cave together. It's just that Tang Ge had made up his mind and didn't agree. In this way, in the afternoon, when Elder Wu Qingfang appeared on the short mountain again, Yi Fan and Pangbo suddenly realized that they would lose another companion. Yi Fan, Pangbo, take care, I hope we can meet again in the future. Tang Ge, you must live. After the three of them encouraged each other, Wu Qingfeng, who was standing by the side, finally became impatient, and directly used the magic rainbow to roll up Tang Ge and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the two disappeared. This afternoon, because of Tang Ge's departure, the atmosphere on the short mountain became very dull, and Yi Fan and Pangbo were no longer in the mood to practice. Outside a town hundreds of miles away from Lingsu Cave, two figures descended from the sky. It was Wu Qingfang and Tang Ge. Although Tang Ge had already been sent out of the Lingsu Cave, Wu Qingfang was kind enough to not leave him directly on the wasteland. The town is in front of you, you can do it yourself. After leaving this sentence, Wu Qingfang rose into the air again and disappeared. As soon as the person left, Tang Ge felt as if a dragon had entered the sea, and he felt extremely comfortable, and he did not enter the small town, but chose another direction and rushed away. During the period, Tang Ge used the secret of the word Xing, every step is 1,000 meters away. In this way, he has been driving in one direction for 1,000 miles, and when a long mountain appeared in front of him, he directly plunged into it. As soon as he came to a quiet valley in the mountains, Tang Ge had to stop. He raised his head and stared at the sky covered with dark clouds after a short while, and said depressedly, "Damn it. The thunder tribulation of this ancient holy body has been held back for so long, and finally I can't hold it anymore." End of this chapter. Chapter 228, Tribulation Thunder Baptism, Golden Sea of Bitterness. Back in the world of Douluo Continent, Tang Ge's awakening rate of the ancient holy body had already reached 19%, and he was just about to face another ferocious thunder tribulation test. But at that time, because he was not fully sure and the environment was not good, he kept holding back and did not dare to break through. But now that he came to the world of shrouding the sky, he was first affected by Dao Xian'an in the huge bronze coffin, which stimulated the tears of life to release a large amount of life energy, which strengthened Tang Ge's soul power and physique. Then he took the divine fruit and the divine spring, and the awakening speed of the ancient holy body reached the point where he could break through at any time, and the accumulation of qi and blood in his body was terrifying. If Tang Ge hadn't endured it all the time, he might have attracted Lei Ji when he was in the void of the spirit. And he suddenly chose to leave today because he realized that his accumulation of the ancient holy body had reached the extreme, and he couldn't bear it any longer. Right now, as soon as he entered the valley, as the suppressive force in his body was completely released, the originally clear sky suddenly became cloudy. The whole valley was suddenly darkened. In the thick dark clouds, the blue thunder continued to flicker, and then there was a loud sound of boom and boom. A palpitating coercion began to emanate continuously. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge, who already had a deep accumulation, was not afraid at all. He first took out the 2 tribulation thunder pills he had drawn before, and then chose the breakthrough of the ancient holy body without hesitation. Along with the trembling of the void, chains of heaven and earth evolved on his body in this world of heavens. The dense chains are constantly connected together, like a cage, trying to trap Tang Ge completely in it. But upon closer inspection, the cages formed by the chains of heaven and earth have already been damaged, and many places have even broken to reveal huge gaps. Now when Tang Ge let go of the accumulation in his body, the awakening rate of the ancient holy body broke through again from 19% to 20%. Only the crisp sound of click and click was heard, and a wave of terrifying divine power began to be continuously released from him, forming an invisible knife to cut off the chains of heaven and earth that trapped him. But for a moment, 1/5 of the chains of heaven and earth that appeared around Tang Ge's body had already been broken, and the surging force rushed out along the gap, forming the sound of the rushing waves of the sea. But at the same time, the dense dark clouds in the sky also turned into a cold and ruthless face of God, and a pair of cold eyes completely condensed by the power of thunder locked onto Tang Ge in the valley. The moment Tang Ge shattered the chains of heaven and earth around him, the face of the gods suddenly let out a deafening roar, and a series of blue thunderbolts turned into thunderstorms and rained down continuously. Rumble. Rumble. Thunderbolts as thick as buckets struck down densely, and Tang Ge was instantly submerged in them. Every thunderbolt looked like it had eyes, and they all fell on him, not only tore his clothes, but also ripped his whole body to pieces. The severe pain hit, making Tang Ge's handsome face a little hideous. But after receiving this fierce attack, the surging accumulation that he had kept in his body all the way burst out instantly, and it contained an indescribably terrifying vitality. If there is a dying old man here at this moment, I am afraid that if he only smells the breath of life emanating from Tang Ge, he may live for another year or a half. And Tang Ge, who possessed such a huge amount of life breath, was even more terrifying. The thunder had just split his skin to pieces, and the next time he saw him, he was completely back to normal. It goes on and on like this. After hundreds of thunderbolts passed, not only did Tang Ge not suffer any harm, but his whole body became stronger and stronger. He had just broken through to 20% of the awakening speed of the ancient holy body, and it was once again rapidly improved under the continuous supply of meteor tears, divine fruit, and the divine spring stored in the furnace of health. 21%, 22%, 23%. It seemed that he also noticed the strengthening of Tang Ge's breath, and the face of God condensed by the robbery cloud in the sky was first startled, and then completely furious. This time it no longer released 100 thunderbolts all at once, but started one at a time. But this thunder suddenly changed from blue to purple, and the power contained in it even Tang Ge, who was immersed in the refreshing feeling brought about by the continuous improvement of the holy body, suddenly burst into hers all over his body. A thick death crisis emerged from his heart in an instant. Damn! Is this the rhythm that must kill me? Looking at the purple thunder that fell from the sky, Tang Ge, who had just opened his eyes, suddenly felt hairy, and couldn't help but curse secretly in his heart. Then he didn't dare to hesitate, and immediately took all the 2 robbery pills he had prepared. Take Gili pill. Tang Ge once again felt the feeling when he crossed the thunder disaster for the first time. An invisible force appeared, as if it was a lightning rod in the previous life. As soon as the purple thunder above the head came down, it was divided into countless pieces by this invisible force and led into Tang Ge's body. Although the result of being struck by lightning was still unavoidable, with the assistance of the 2 thunder tribulation pills, the death crisis just now subsided immediately. At the same time, with a life energy provided by meteor tears, divine fruit and divine spring, the purple Gili, which was continuously bombarded and diverted, began to form a strange balance with him. No one can help anyone. After realizing the situation, Tang Ge couldn't help secretly heaving a sigh of relief. After looking up at the face of God in the sky above his head, with a thought in his mind, he simply sat cross-legged on the ground. At the same time, a large number of resources were also taken out by Tang Ge. If we don't open up the sea of suffering at this time, when will we wait? Immediately, without any hesitation, Tang Ge continued to go through the source of devouring madly in the furnace of hell, and at the same time began to attack the sea of bitterness according to the cultivation method in the Taoism. Because his ancient holy body has already exceeded 20% awakening, there will be no situation where the sea of bitterness is as hard as divine iron and cannot be opened. So when Tang Ge sensed the wheel of life, he immediately activated it, and with the help of the continuous energy brought by the source, he rushed towards the silent sea of bitterness. I saw that Tang Ge's sea of bitterness trembled violently at first, followed by divine brilliance, which was as gorgeous as a rainbow, accompanied by bursts of lightning and thunder. There were even more golden waves surging, setting off a tsunami. In his sea of suffering, a golden ocean gradually appeared, and it continued to expand outward, becoming bigger and bigger. If someone is standing here at this moment, the scene of lightning, thunder and roaring waves just now clearly happened in Tang Ge's bitter sea. But people standing here can still feel as if they have really come to the coast and are facing a vast and undulating ocean. And this expansive ocean is still golden. End of this chapter. Chapter 229, Entering the Spring of Fate. Shanzhen Shanan. The reason why the ancient saint physique is considered a waste body is not only that its cultivation requires massive resources, but also because its every breakthrough is hindered by the chains of heaven and earth. In other words, if other physiques only need to open a door to go from one realm to another, then the ancient holy body has no door. If you want to break through, you have to open up the door first, and then you can push it away. This is the reason why the ancient holy body is called the waste body. But now Tang Ge has already used the system to cultivate the ancient holy body to 20% of the awakening degree before practicing the method of covering the sky, and the early gates have been repaired. So all he needs to do is push open the doors through a lot of resources. And resources are not lacking for Tang Ge. 60,000 caddies is enough for his early training. So when he chose to break through, Tang Ge, who had broken the part of the world chain around him, was not hindered at all, and a sea of bitterness was easily opened up by him. Not only that, with the help of Gile's tempering, once Tang Ge's sea of bitterness was opened up, it not only presented a golden sea, but also its stability far surpassed that of other monks. If you look carefully, you can even see lines like chains appearing in the sky of his continuously boiling golden sea of bitterness. These lines are not the chains of heaven and earth that imprison Tang Ge, but the lines of the gods that endow him with powerful abilities. It's just that Tang Ge's mind is completely focused on opening up and expanding the sea of suffering at the moment, plus the influence of the external thunder disaster, and he didn't notice these. In this way, several hours passed without knowing it. Because the valley is located in the rolling mountains, and it is far away from human towns, even though thunder roared in the sky, it did not attract other monks. Tang Ge was able to survive his second Eucharist thunder tribulation here smoothly. When Tang Ge woke up and opened his eyes, the thick robbery clouds that had gathered in the sky had already disappeared as the power of thunder receded. In the dark night, the stars twinkle all over the sky, which looks extremely charming. Listening to the constant buzzing of insects all around, Tang Ge only felt very transparent and comfortable, and had the urge to open his mouth and howl. But in the end he endured it, and as his mind sank into his body, what immediately caught his eyes was a dazzling golden sea of bitterness. That's right. Even if he has just successfully opened up the sea of bitterness, Tang Ge's Sea of Bitterness is already the size of a lake. Compared with the pea-sized Sea of Bitterness of other people, this is simply the gap between heaven and earth. Moreover, Tang Ge could clearly feel that with the background he had accumulated so far, he could continue to expand the front of the Sea of Bitterness. But Tang Ge didn't do this, but prepared to take the realm a step further after opening up the Sea of Bitterness. At this time, in his Sea of Bitterness like a lake, the golden waves were constantly churning and roaring, with a monstrous momentum and endless vitality. And in the center of the Sea of Bitterness, there are more clouds billowing upwards like wolf smoke, like an active volcano erupting. The god lines condensed in the sky are like iron, and there are 36 lines in detail, which is exactly the number of Xiangang 72 and Disha, making the whole Sea of Bitterness even more stable and difficult to break. The churning Sea of Bitterness, the gushing vitality. It seems that they are about to communicate with the wheel of life and release a divine spring. Tang Ge understood that this was not his illusion, but that he was really about to break through to the next level. So Tang Ge didn't hesitate, and after absorbing a lot of sources, he closed his eyes again. As the Sea of Bitterness churned, waves of faint waves began to come out of his body, and his whole body was shrouded in a layer of divine light. Especially when running the Daojing, powerful life fluctuations appeared in Tang Ge's body, and the rich vitality continuously gushed out from the Sea of Bitterness towards the limbs and bones. His physical body was nourished and became stronger than before. Finally, several hours passed. When a white line lit up in the sky, accompanied by a thunderous bang, a powerful aura erupted from Tang Ge. As he opened his eyes, divine light shot out from his eyes, shooting out like 2 bolts of lightning. And in Tang Ge's body, at the center of the lake-like Sea of Bitterness, there is a spring, which communicates with the wheel of life under the Sea of Bitterness. There are constantly surging breath of life overflowing from the wheel of life, and rushing out along the passage into the spring. Then these breaths of life turned into ripples and immediately rippled away to the Sea of Bitterness, directly adding a sense of agility and nature to the Sea of Bitterness. The Sea of Gold is rippling, and the spring is bubbling. When the two are combined into one, the divine power is endless and life is exuberant. Is this the Fate Spring realm? Feeling the power and majestic vitality surging in his body all the time, Tang Ge couldn't help muttering to himself. Immediately, he stood up suddenly, and as a divine rainbow appeared and enveloped him, his whole body flew into the air. This time, Tang Ge did not use the power of the Douluo, but used the pure method of covering the sky. Open up the Sea of Bitterness and enter the realm of life spring, then you can become a Changhong and fly in the sky. Moreover, it can also mobilize the divine patterns condensed by divine power, and perform all kinds of powerful attacks with mystical techniques. Now Tang Ge looked at his Sea of Bitterness, and there were a total of, divine lines, which was much stronger than other monks of the same realm. He was slightly excited, looked at a high mountain in the distance, and released all his divine patterns without any hesitation. As soon as the 108 divine patterns appeared, they turned into divine light and flew towards the high mountain in front of them like iron chains protruding from the void. Rumble. Rumble. Finally, under the bombardment of the, divine patterns, the hundreds of meters high mountain crumbled and shattered in the blink of an eye, making deafening bangs. Cracks like spider webs appeared on the entire ground, quickly extending in all directions. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge was instantly satisfied. With his power, even a monk of the same realm would be directly broken into pieces. Even killing the enemy by leapfrogging is not a problem for Tang Ge at all. With the blessing of the ancient holy body, his realm can no longer represent his real combat power. While thinking about it, Tang Ge took back the 108 divine patterns that flew out. But at this moment, it seemed that something happened, and he suddenly let out a, with a look of surprise on his face. Originally, Tang Ge's martial soul in Douluo had nothing to do with the shading sky cultivation method. But now, when his consciousness sank into the sea of suffering, an illusory scroll had appeared here at some point. It is Tang Ge's Wuhan Mountain River Shiji map. And as dozens of divine patterns were absorbed, this map of mountains, rivers and communities became somewhat solid. Then it sank straight down, settled in the spring on the bottom of the sea, and began to receive the baptism of the divine spring of life continuously. End of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Elder Han destined to be a tragedy. Tang Ge was very surprised to see his martial spirit mountain river Shiji map directly entering the Qhe spring. He could clearly feel that after absorbing dozens of divine patterns, the map of mountains, rivers, and communities gradually became solidified from illusory. Could it be possible to directly become a thing? Tang Ge couldn't help but think of the weapon that covers the world. Because according to common sense, each of the four realms of the Sea of Bitterness, the Spring of Life, the Bridge of God, and the other shore in the chapter of Lunhe can sacrifice a kind of artifact. The utensil is forged from the divine pattern, and various precious materials are given to sacrifice to the type you want. This is a bit like a natal weapon. Of course, according to the affiliation in the Taoist scriptures, a kind of tool can also be sacrificed in these four realms, because all powerful tools are formed by the combination of the four realms. When Tang Ge was practicing this Haitian method, he had considered the choice of vessel, but he didn't expect that before he took action, this vessel would choose on his own. Tang Ge was surprised and caught off guard by the automatic entry of Shamshejitu into the Qhe spring. Fortunately, compared with the powerful weapons in this world, such as magic whips, cornucopias, and even heavenly emperor tripods, the map of Shamshiji, which is known as top 10 ultimate innate spirit treasures in the primordial world, is also true. Although the map of mountains, rivers, and land at this time is not a treasure at first glance, the Wuhan formed based on it obviously already contains its charm. Tang Ge takes the Wuhan mountains, rivers and Shiji map as the main body, uses 108 divine patterns as roots, and then incorporates various fairy gold for forging. He believed that if he became an emperor in the future, this map of mountains, rivers and land would be his extreme weapon. But what puzzled Tang Ge was, he is a man with two martial spirits, but only Shamshejitu entered the Bitter Sea Spring, and the other martial spirit Four Swords of Xuxin didn't even respond at all. Could it be because the Four Swords of Jade Immortals is a gift from the system and is of a higher grade, so it's because he doesn't like the Spring of Bitterness at this time? Tang Ge tried to lead the martial spirit Four Swords of Xuxin in his right hand into the Sea of Bitterness, but there was really no reaction at all, and even a wave of resistance appeared. After discovering this situation, Tang Ge stopped trying. If you don't want to enter, don't want to enter. A child who is obedient is a good child, and the picture of Shamshiji is very good. And Tang Ge has already thought about it. After his divine lines are condensed into 365 paths, if he is lucky enough to draw the Zhoutian Xingdao formation, he will directly arrange this formation in the Shamshiji map. At that time, the power of the Shamshiji map will be even higher. Thinking of this, Tang Ge was very excited, as if he saw a scene where 5 gods and demons in 360 received the power of the stars and killed the enemy with one hand. But immediately, he dispelled the picture in his mind. For things that are too far away, it's better not to be so ambitious. It just so happened that it was already dawn. Because there was too much commotion yesterday, Tang Ge was afraid that he would attract the nearby Danang, so he prepared to leave here. Moreover, he has already planned that he will not go to other places in the next 2 months, and will directly find a safe valley to continue retreating. By the time the cultivation base reaches Shinkeo or the other side in one breath, half a year is almost over. Tang Ge will directly leave the shrouding world and return to the Douluo Continent. It's just that when Tang Ge didn't expect, before he had time to leave, a divine rainbow suddenly galloped from a distance, and appeared in the valley in the blink of an eye. When Shen Hong disappeared, what fell to the ground was an old man with a haggard face and cold eyes. What's more, his body was filled with a strong sense of death, as if half of his foot had already stepped into the dead ground, and he might burp at any time. Seeing the appearance of this old man with gloomy eyes, Tang Ge frowned immediately. Because he clearly felt a malicious intention through the other party's eyes. I don't know who this senior is, but Tang Ge didn't do anything, but pretended to be respectful and asked. Hearing Tang Ge's question, the old man who looked like dry wood on the opposite side took a deep breath instead of answering. Immediately afterwards, as if he smelled something, an intoxicated smile appeared on his skinny face. I smelled a strong breath of life. This breath really smells so good. Is this the effect after eating the divine fruit? It's so good. These weird words coupled with the distorted smile on the shriveled old man's face made a disgusting Tang Ge shudder. However, when the other party mentioned the god fruit, he seemed to think of something, and his originally puzzled heart suddenly became enlightened. When looking at the withered old man again, Tang Ge also laughed. He had already put away the previous respect, and said lightly, "If I'm not wrong, you should be Elder Han from the Spiritual Void Cave, right?" Although the plot of Shrouding World is not as clear as that of Douluo World, Tang Ge still remembers some of the development experience in the early stage. Among them, the Elder Han in front of him is one of them. After all, as one of the top 10 tragic figures in Taishan, Elder Han is still very capable to occupy a seat. The other party began to plot against Yifan because of his exhausted life, and wanted to improve his cultivation by training Yifan, who had eaten the magic fruit, into adult medicine. As a result, after repeated calculations, in the end, the Elder Han not only didn't eat Yifan, but turned all the precious medicinal materials he had accumulated for a long time into Yifan's background. And he died directly in Yifan's hands, and he was the kind who was angry to death. But Tang Ge really didn't expect that just after he left Lingsu Cave, the other party couldn't help but chased him out, and finally found him. Could it be that it has a dog nose? Feeling puzzled in his heart, Tang Ge suddenly couldn't help laughing again when he thought of what Yifan said when he pissed Elder Han to death. 10 meters away, Elder Han, who was indulging in the rich breath of life, couldn't help but stagnate for a while as his identity was exposed. He was surprised and heard Tang Ge laugh again, as if he could feel the mockery in the other party's laughter, and his withered face instantly darkened. Staring at Tang Ge with murderous intent, Elder Han said in a cold voice, "Since you know the identity of this old man, you dare to be so rude. Aren't you afraid that this old man will kill you?" "Kill me?" Hearing Elder Han's words, Tang Ge raised his eyebrows, and said in great surprise, "Could it be that Elder Han found me all the way to catch the attention of the divine fruit in my body? Or do you think I'm stupid? I don't know if you want to refine me as a human medicine?" As soon as these words came out, Elder Han on the opposite side stared sharply, and his eyes were filled with disbelief when he looked at Tang Ge. This kid actually knows? How can it be? Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Elder Han and gained, shock points, huh? There is actually a system prompt beeping. And Tang Ge's eyes lit up all of a sudden. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 231. All the gods are out, kill with one finger. Tang Ge was a little surprised by the sudden sound of the system prompt, but then he curled his lips with disgust on his face. Only 3,000 points? But it's barely enough. Before dying, you can harvest another wave of wool, which can be regarded as a well-deserved death. What's more, Tang Ge still remembered that when Elder Han was refining Yifan as human medicine, he brought a lot of precious fairy medicine with him. Now that the other party has directly changed the target to him, it is presumed that these fairy grasses are also carried with him. So Tang Ge suddenly felt that the Elder Han in front of him was really kind, and he didn't forget to come in time before he left to send him another wave of cultivation resources. For a moment, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. "Elder Han, for the sake of you traveling so far to give gifts, I must be quick and ruthless when I make a move later, and I will definitely not let you die with regret." "You?" Hearing Tang Ge's words, Elder Han's face suddenly became grim. But immediately he snorted, and as the surging aura erupted from his body, he yelled in a cold voice, "When the old man catches you and turns you into human medicine, let's see how sharp your teeth are." After the words fell, a green wooden ruler appeared in Elder Han's hand, and he walked slowly towards Tang Ge. Under the cover of his powerful aura, Tang Ge seemed to be stunned, and stood still for a while. Seeing this scene, Elder Han couldn't help showing a ferocious smile on his face. "As long as the little guy in front of me who has eaten the divine fruit is made into adult medicine and devoured, he will be able to break through to the next level smoothly." With this mentality in mind, Elder Han, who had already walked in front of Tang Ge, immediately raised the green wooden ruler in his hand. But just when he was about to slap the opponent unconscious with a foot, a dazzling golden light suddenly shot out in front of him. For a moment, Elder Han couldn't help closing his eyes. Then he felt a sharp pain in his chest, and as he flew upside down uncontrollably, he spat out a mouthful of blood in midair with a wow. "Who is it?" Enraged in his heart, Elder Han, who was still in midair, quickly used Shen Hong to stabilize his falling body. Then he opened his eyes and looked at the person who suddenly attacked him on the opposite side. It turned out that there were no other people tens of meters away, but Tang Ge was the only one. But at this moment, Tang Ge was also floating in midair, surrounded by a divine rainbow, and exuded the aura of a powerful monk. Elder Han felt this aura from Tang Ge, and his whole body suddenly became ill. He almost screamed out, "You! How could you? This breath! It's only been a few months, how could you have the cultivation of the spring of fate? Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Elder Han and gained, shock points. The system prompt sounded again in Tang Ge's mind. Looking at Elder Han, who was punched by him so that he vomited blood and was cut off by the way, Tang Ge couldn't help secretly sympathizing with him. What a poor old man, he couldn't leave his name in the system in the end. But sympathy belongs to sympathy, but Tang Ge didn't show any mercy when he started. Regardless of whether Elder Han, who was tens of meters away, was ready or not, when he heard the system prompt sounded in his mind, he suddenly swelled his sea of suffering. Whoa! Whoa! Accompanied by the violent churning of the golden sea of bitterness, the divine patterns surrounding the sea of bitterness and the divine patterns re-spit out by the Shanshiji map rushed out of Tang Ge's body in an instant. A total of 108 divine patterns are like chains of heaven and earth. As soon as they protruded from the void, they ding-dong and ding-dong hid and entangled Elder Han. The terrifying breath of divine power was released, and suddenly there was a thunderous boom. It was faintly visible that Tang Ge's whole body was shrouded in golden light, and lightning flashed and disappeared behind him continuously, and the golden sea waves rolled. Witnessing this scene, Elder Han's sunken eyes widened suddenly, and he gasped in fright. There are 108 divine patterns? What is the identity of this kid? Under the pressure of a strong death crisis, even though his heart was full of regret, Elder Han knew that it was useless at this time, so he could only do his best to defend. Call out, call out, call out, call out. Accompanied by bursts of piercing sounds, 12 green wooden swords flew out of his body in an instant, turning into 12 green lights to meet the falling divine pattern iron chains. Just a pity. The divine power possessed by Tang Ge's divine pattern is far beyond that of other monks in the realm. Even a monk of a higher realm has to face the suppression of these 108 divine patterns. So when the 12 green wooden swords released by Elder Han just came into contact with a Shenwen iron chain, they burst out dazzling sparks. Immediately afterwards, an incomparably terrifying power erupted from the iron chain, rushing towards the 12 green wooden swords like waves. Not a moment. Only the sounds of click and click were heard, and cracks appeared on the 12 green wooden swords. There was a wailing sound coming from the green wooden sword. Elder Han, the owner of the green wood sword, was hit by a huge shock as his natal weapon shattered, and he opened his mouth to spit out another mouthful of blood. He couldn't help roaring out in shock. No, but just as the 12 green wooden swords were instantly shredded by the 108 god pattern iron chains, Elder Han, who had been severely injured, turned around suddenly and ran away without hesitation. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge narrowed his eyes suddenly. Want to escape? Immediately, he directly raised his hand and put his fingers together to lightly tap Elder Han, who was fleeing to the distance, and the surging divine power in the divine eyes of the sea of bitterness in his body was released continuously. Cut off the finger to start, There was a slight tremor in the void at first, and then the golden light on the fingertips of the two fingers pointed by Tang Ge shone brightly, and 5 divine lights like golden dragons shot out instantly. The distance of, meters is reached in an instant. When Elder Han found that the 5 gods had turned into scissors and came towards him, he had no time to dodge, so he turned his head and punched him with all his strength. But in the end, just as his fist came into contact with one of the divine lights, it was instantly torn apart and turned into a bloody mess. The severe pain made Elder Han couldn't help but let out a scream. I don't want to, rumble. But soon, his scream stopped abruptly. Under the suppression of the unique technique of the Void Realm, cutting the Sky Finger, the mere Elder Han of the Shinkia realm didn't even hold on for the blink of an eye, and was directly annihilated. The remaining power exploded in midair, and there were bursts of deafening explosions. It was faintly visible that a large number of immortal medicines exuding a fragrance appeared out of thin air, and were quickly torn into pieces by the waves of the explosion. These immortal medicines were all stored in Elder Han's Sea of Bitterness, and after Elder Han's death, they all fell from his Sea of Bitterness. If Tang Ge hadn't rushed to collect it in time after discovering it, I am afraid that all the immortal medicines that appeared would be destroyed. But even so, when the aftermath of the explosion passed, Tang Ge looked at the situation of collecting the fairy medicine just now, and felt extremely distressed. Unexpectedly, only 3 undamaged jade boxes and wooden boxes were obtained. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 232 2 months, Sea of Bitterness Hanging God Bridge. The explosion was still going on, but Tang Ge didn't stay here, but directly drove Shen Hong to leave quickly. After finding another quiet valley, he fell from the sky, and then directly opened a temporary cave on a mountain wall with his fist. Because he didn't know any Dao patterns and formations, Tang Ge could only make do with it for a while. Fortunately, there were no wild animals in this wilderness, and it was rare for a monk to see a single person. He was not worried about being discovered. Boom! Accompanied by a dull sound, Tang Ge finally breathed a sigh of relief when the hole was closed again by a punch, and sat cross-legged on a blanket taken out of the system space. The pitch-black cave instantly became brighter as a luminous pearl was taken out. Even after going through the battle just now, he still killed a cultivator at the Divine Bridge level with his Life Spring level cultivation base. But this kind of leapfrog killing the enemy will be commonplace in the future for Tang Ge, who has the ancient holy body, and it is not even a problem to kill the enemy at a higher level. So in fact, he didn't consume too much divine power, just a few breaths at the moment, and a large amount of life essence has spewed out from the surging spring. Simply Tang Ge's thoughts moved, and all the 108 divine patterns were integrated into the picture of Shamshiji. The originally illusory map of mountains, rivers and communities instantly became much more solid. Although it is still far from a complete body, it can already attack out of the body like a weapon refined by others. However, compared with those offensive weapons, Shanshiji's plan focuses on suppression and bans. Tang Ge didn't care much about this. With the physique of the ancient saint physique, he does not lack the means of attack. What he lacks is how to prevent the enemies who come to him from escaping so quickly. After turning his attention away from the map of Shamshiji, Tang Ge took out the 2 jade boxes and a wooden box he had received in a hurry before. All 3 boxes were opened, and a strong fragrance came out immediately. Tang Ge's spirit was lifted even more, and he felt a strong essence of life and a scorching flame. When he looked at the things in the wooden box, what caught his eyes was a black lotus seed the size of a pigeon egg, from which the essence of life emanated. The other wooden box and the jade box contained a rare 9-leaf herb carved like ruby and a green fruit the size of an egg, respectively. Like the black lotus seeds in front, these 2 kinds of elixir are also full of rich essence of life. But think about it, Elder Han is on the verge of dying, and the elixir he wants to refine is to make up for the lack of life force in his body. So it was only natural for the other party to collect so many elixir containing the essence of life. It's a pity that the explosion just now directly destroyed almost all the elixir that Elder Han had collected in half his life, and the only ones that could be preserved were these 3 from Singer Tang, have to say. What a waste. Hey. It seems that if there are enemies coming to your door in the future, in order to prevent them from putting all the good things in the sea of suffering, you must be gentle when you kill them. For a while, staring at the box containing the 3 fairy medicines in his hand, Tang Ge couldn't help but sigh with emotion in a low voice. Golem. At this time, a special sound suddenly sounded in the cave. When he heard this sound, Tang Ge, who was feeling emotional, was taken aback for a moment, and then he couldn't help reaching out and patted his forehead when he came back to his senses. Look at my memory, I've been practicing for so long, and I'm so focused on taking care of the bitter sea, I even forgot to appease my baby's stomach, because of taking the divine fruit and the divine spring, and the meteor tears in his heart. Tang Ge actually does not lack the essence of life in his body. On the contrary, he is now like Tang Monk in Journey to the West, not to mention that he can live forever by eating a bite of meat, but blood is definitely more precious than some fairy medicines. So Tang Ge didn't really need the 3 immortal medicines he just got. On the contrary, the source of absorption can improve with strength faster. It just so happened that Tang Ge didn't plan to go out to wander anymore, and planned to stay in this cave and continue to practice, so as to spend the remaining 2 months of the plan. If possible, by the way, raise your cultivation base by 1 level. Thinking in this way, after Tang Ge closed the box containing the 3 kinds of immortal medicines and recovered the system space, he took out a large amount of delicious meat that he carried with him to satisfy his appetite. After eating and drinking, he directly took out the source of several thousand caddies from the system space. Wow. In the blink of an eye, the source is transparent as amber piled up around Tang Ge to form a hill, and a strong breath of life was continuously released from it. This originally ordinary cave has instantly become a blessed land of immortals. Just smelling it makes me feel like I'm about to ascend to immortality. But Tang Ge didn't feel anything about it. As he slowly entered the state of cultivation, he started to run the hell furnace to devour and refine the surrounding sources as if he was eating a regular meal. The surging essence of life rushed into the sea of bitterness, and Tang Ge's original calm golden sea of bitterness became violent again, and began to constantly set off turbulent waves. Every time the golden waves beat and hit the edge, the sea of bitterness that was originally the size of a lake would slowly expand a little bit outward again. Although this expansion is almost invisible, the divine power filling the sea of bitterness is getting stronger and stronger. A series of golden divine patterns began to be slowly condensed again in the cave. The scene that happened in Tang Ge's bitter sea was manifested again at some point, covered by the golden light curtain around him. The sound of raging waves resounded through. Deo blue thunder appeared from time to time, making the aura around Tang Ge more majestic and terrifying. That's it. Before I knew it, 2 months had passed quietly. As Tang Ge was completely immersed in cultivation, the thousands of caddies of energy that surrounded him had almost been exhausted, but the rewards he brought were generous. In the still rolling golden sea of bitterness, more than 10 golden divine patterns were condensed in the sky above. In the middle of the sea of bitterness, the fountain of life gushes out, and the source of divine power boils. The spring, which was originally invisible to the bottom, has been widened many times. And from time to time, rays of light rush out of it, converging on the sky above the sea of bitterness and lingering for a long time. After sensing this situation, Tang Ge, who had left a trace of consciousness in the sea of suffering, understood. His cultivation has reached the pinnacle of life's spring. Simply. Tang Ge, who was full of anticipation in his heart, no longer hesitated, and took out the Qianjin Yuan in an instant, and was swallowed by the furnace of hell along with the rest of the Yuan before. At the moment when the melting furnace of foundation was operated to the extreme, the pure essence of life poured into a sea of suffering like a torrent. Rumble. Rumble. Suddenly, Tang Ge's bitter sea began to tsunami, thunder burst, and countless rays of light quickly began to gather together. Wait till the end. As Tang Ge's body trembled violently, a bright rainbow suddenly appeared above his golden sea of bitterness, crossing the sky. It was extremely gorgeous. End of this chapter. Chapter 233 Meeting Before Parting. As the rainbow traversed the sea of bitterness, Tang Ge burst out with an aura stronger than the spring of life. At the same time, under the baptism of life essence formed after a large number of sources were refined, his bones suddenly became as white as jade, and the bones were as hard as a weapon of a magic weapon, which was difficult to destroy. His internal organs are infiltrated and spotless, and his skin is crystal clear and almost transparent, shining with precious light. And his golden blood became thicker and thicker as the blood vessels became thicker, like the Milky Way falling from the 9 heavens, making a rushing sound. At some point, Tang Ge opened his eyes, and 2 rays of divine light shot out, leaving a deep hole on the wall in front of him. He didn't hide the excitement in his heart at all. With a smile on his face, he muttered to himself. 2 months of submerged training, consuming thousands of caddies of resources, finally condensed the Cheyenne May and entered the Divine Bridge realm. At this time, the rainbow across Tang Ge's golden sea of bitterness represents the Cheyenne May of entering the Shinkyo realm. It's just because he has just entered this realm, so the Cheyenne May is only a small section, but it will continue to grow with the improvement of his cultivation. When the Cheyenne May reaches a certain length and leads to the unknown direction of the Sea of Bitterness, it will usher in the fog test of the Divine Bridge realm. This kind of test is something every monk in the Shinkyo realm has to go through. As long as you break through the test of the mist and find the true destination in your heart where the Divine Bridge leads, you can cross the sea of suffering to reach the other shore and become a monk in the other shore. But Wang Xin's journey is not easy to talk about. There are too many monks in the Shinkyo realm who are trapped in this realm and cannot go any further for the rest of their lives. However, Tang Ge has just entered the Shinkyo realm, so the test is still a bit far away for him, so there is no need to worry about it. So after he calmed down his tense spirit, he first called up the personal information panel, shocking system, host, Tang Ge, level 69 Soul Emperor Lun He, Shinkyo realm, martial souls, twin martial souls, map of mountains and rivers, 4 swords of immortals, spirit ring, black, 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 red, affected by the mountains and rivers domain, can be merged into one and change any color, soul skill, mountain and river domain, unique, currently covering a spherical area with a radius of, meters around the host, soul spike, yin-yang wings, Mahamudra of life and death, Tai Chi sword formation, incarnation of giant spirit god, martial arts, chaotic cloaking wind hammer method, secretive Xing character, hell smelting, heavenly god fist, battle robe of gods, cutting the sky finger, physique, ancient holy body, awakening 27%, shock value 92,350, compared with before. Tang Ge's information has not changed much. The only extra thing is that in the level column, the newly added God's Battle Robe and Cheyenne's Hazy appeared in the field of practice in martial arts of the Shrouding World. It is the shock value column. After these changes, Tang Ge's original 20 shock value is almost enough for 10 consecutive draws. After all, his soul power level has reached level, and when the time comes, there will be another 10 consecutive draws. I don't know if he can get the 7th soul ring as he wishes. But even if the soul power level does not break through to the soul sage, Tang Ge believes that with his current real combat power, he can already walk sideways in the title Douluo. Thinking of this, his heart was filled with anticipation, and he wished he could return to the world of Douluo Continent right now. Of course, although he thought so in his heart, Tang Ge didn't really do it. After all, it was so hard to come to the Shrouding World, and after leaving this time, I still don't know when I will get the next opportunity. So even if he didn't plan to go to other places, he had to go back to Lingsu Cave to meet Yifan first. According to the development of the plot, the current Tang Yifan should still be practicing in Lingsu Cave, and has not left. Thinking of this, Tang Ge, who didn't have a few days left, stopped hesitating and stood up directly. As he moved his muscles and bones, bursts of cracking bone sounds suddenly came out of his body. At the same time, the terrifying power burst out and whipped in the air, forming ripples visible to the naked eye. With a satisfied smile on the corner of Tang Ge's mouth, he walked to the entrance of the cave that was blocked before, and just slammed forward with his clenched right fist. In the sudden appearance of the gods, accompanied by the loud bang, countless broken stones turned into stone flowers and splashed everywhere. A smooth exit appeared in front of Tang Ge. Immediately, he walked out of the cave. After the divine rainbow separated from his body, it enveloped him and lifted off the ground, instantly turning into an afterimage of the divine rainbow and galloping away towards the distance. Lingsu Cave, Lingsu Cliff. On a huge rock, Yifan and Pangbo, who had just received Bakoi, were practicing here. Pangbo was not in a hurry because he had already opened up the bitter sea, but Yifan, who was still working hard, was full of urgency. He knew that the time he stayed here was getting shorter and shorter. Suddenly, a crane flew from a distance, and there was a cold voice from above. "Who is Yifan?" "I am, brother, what's the matter?" Hearing someone calling him, Yifan couldn't help being stunned for a moment. When he saw that the voice came from a young monk sitting on the crane, he quickly stood up and replied. The young monk nodded. "Come up and follow me to the mountain gate, someone is looking for you outside." After speaking, without waiting for Yifan's consent, the young monk released a rainbow and dragged him onto the crane. The crane uttered a crisp cry, turned around and flew towards the mountain gate of Lingsu Cave, leaving only a beautiful white afterimage in the blink of an eye. Pangbo, who was left alone on the rock, looked bewildered. Who will come to Yifan? Not to mention Pangbo, who didn't know why, when Yifan was brought to the Shianshan gate of Lingsu Cave and saw the person who was looking for him in the young monk's mouth, he was also taken aback for a moment. But after regaining his senses, he suddenly looked surprised, couldn't help but speak, and walked over quickly. Tang Ge, that's right, it was Tang Ge who had been separated for 2 months who suddenly came to Yifan at this moment. To be a stranger in a foreign country alone, think of love every time during the festive season. Even though it's only been 2 months since they separated, Yifan is still full of surprise and joy when he sees Tang Ge again, as if seeing a relative who has been separated for a long time. Tang Ge watched Yifan walking quickly, with a smile on his face. Because the young monk who brought him just now had already avoided, so Yifan didn't hide his mood at all, and he couldn't wait to say as soon as he walked over. Tang Ge, I didn't expect to see you here again. I'm so happy that you can come back safely, perhaps because they are both ancient holy bodies. Yifan couldn't help talking about his 2-month experience. There are also his difficulties in the process of cultivation and the pain that has been accumulated in his heart and has never been revealed to others. Tang Ge listened without interrupting. It wasn't until the other party finished speaking that he suddenly said, Yifan, I'm leaving. I came back suddenly this time to see you for the last time. End of this chapter. Chapter 234. Yifan, who was successfully robbed of wool. To go? See you for the last time? Hearing Tang Ge's sudden utterance, Yifan didn't react for a while, and suddenly said in a panic, Tang Ge, Don't let yourself be overwhelmed. Is it because what I just said has affected you? If this is the case, you can just treat my words as farting. It is very difficult to cultivate the ancient Eucharist, but haven't we experienced all the difficult things? What kind of difficulty is this? You said we must be confident in ourselves. Look, I haven't opened up the sea of suffering during this period of cultivation, but my strength has become great. As he spoke, he was afraid that Tang Ge would not listen to him, so he hurriedly found a small stone nearby, and he punched it with a force of thousands of caddies, smashing it into pieces in an instant. Not far away, seeing this scene, Tang Ge really couldn't laugh or cry. What can't you think about it? I'm just saying goodbye. So seeing Yi Fan, who was about to continue to perform the boulder-crushing performance, he hurriedly stepped forward to stop him, and explained with a wry smile, Yi Fan, I can't think about it. The main purpose of coming this time is to say goodbye to you. Because I felt very good going out for the first 2 months, so I am going to continue to go further afield, so I will come back and meet you again before I leave. Really? Yi Fan didn't believe it. Tang Ge nodded helplessly. That's true, it's even more real than real gold. After confirming that he had misunderstood, Yi Fan suddenly became quite embarrassed. He couldn't help scratching his head, but he still endured it. He is now a handsome man with long flowing hair, and he can't mess up his hairstyle. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge felt quite funny. However, he didn't let this awkward atmosphere continue. After making sure that there were no other people around, he directly took out a source the size of a fist from the system space. As soon as the source appeared, a strong essence of life emanated from it. Yi Fan noticed this situation, his eyes fell on Yuan, and he couldn't help but wonder, Tang Ge, what is this? It's called the source, and it's a cultivation resource that contains a high concentration of life essence. It can be of great help to your cultivation after opening up the sea of suffering and successfully opening up the sea of suffering. Hearing Yi Fan's question, Tang Ge explained while handing Yuan with a big fist. Looking at Yuan, who is close at hand, Yi Fan was slightly taken aback. Tang Ge, what are you? Before I leave to say goodbye, after much deliberation, this is the only thing I can take out as a gift. Don't be disgusted, just accept it, but don't let others know. With that said, Tang Ge stuffed the source directly into Yi Fan's arms. After Yi Fan reacted, he was a little anxious, and said, I can't take such a precious resource, you should keep it for yourself. After all, if you can open up the sea of suffering one day earlier, it will be more secure for your own safety. But unfortunately, how could his strength be as big as Tang Ge's? He just found out that the source of the big fist got into his collar in the evasion. Moreover, as soon as the life essence emanating from the source penetrated into his body, it shocked his whole body, and he felt an urge to break through. This. Yi Fan was both shocked and moved. He didn't expect Tang Ge to get such a precious treasure, but he was willing to give such a precious treasure to himself. Seeing the other party's determined gaze, he could only nod in the end. Thank you, Tang Ge, thank you. We all came from the same place by taking the Kowloon coffin. If we don't care about each other, in this strange place, who will care about us anymore? Tang Ge shook his head and said. Hearing Tang Ge's words, Yi Fan was also touched. However, when he thought of the powerful force transmitted from the opponent's hand just now when he evaded the source, he still couldn't help being curious and asked. Tang Ge, how is your cultivation now? Have you sensed the wheel of life? Tang Ge smiled and shook his head. Seeing this, Yi Fan knew that he must have underestimated the other party, so he guessed again, could it be that you have opened up a sea of suffering? But Tang Ge smiled and shook his head again. This made Yi Fan gasp directly. If it wasn't for sensing the wheel of life, or opening up the sea of bitterness, then only the spring of life above the sea of bitterness remained. This is too incredible, right? But think about Tang Ge being able to get out that kind of source that contains such a rich life essence, and he can return safely after leaving Lingsu Cave for 2 months. While Yi Fan was shocked, he gradually accepted the result. But he didn't feel jealous about it, instead he was very happy for Tang Ge. Tang Ge, I didn't expect you to reach the Fate Spring Realm in 2 months. If Elder Wu of Lingsu Cave knew about this, he would definitely regret letting you go. As a result, as soon as Yi Fan said this, Tang Ge rolled his eyes. Who told you that I am now in the Fate Spring Realm? Isn't it the Fate Spring Realm? After Yi Fan was stunned for a moment, he couldn't help but wondered, it can't be less than 2 months. You can still cultivate to the Divine Bridge state above the Life Spring state. Originally, he just said this casually, but when Tang Ge heard it, he smiled and nodded immediately. That's right, I am now a monk at the Divine Bridge realm, At the same time, a divine rainbow that only exists in the Fate Spring realm has appeared around Tang Ge, and a Cheyenne maid that belongs to the Divine Bridge realm has been manifested by him. The surging and powerful breath emanated, which made Yi Fan, who was still skeptical, suddenly feel a strong pressure. And at this moment, his eyes were even wider, staring at Tang Ge blankly, his face full of disbelief. It turned out to be the Divine Bridge realm. Because of 5 or 6 months of cultivation in Lingsu Cave, although Yi Fan has not yet opened up the Sea of Bitterness, he is familiar with the 4 realms of the Lunhe Secret Realm, Bitter Sea, Fate Spring, Xingqiao and Bishan. Every time a monk steps into a realm, it is a sublimation of strength and life. In particular, the ability to control the flight of the divine rainbow in the Fate Spring realm is the envy of every monk who is new to cultivation. Yi Fan remembered that the elder Wu who taught them to practice seemed to be only in the Xingqiao realm, and Tang Ge, who had only set foot in the practice like himself, had not seen him for 2 months, but he had already reached the same level as elder Wu. This is too exaggerated, isn't it? Could it be that Tang Ge had other adventures during these 2 months? After thinking about it, this is the only reason that can explain why the other party can make rapid progress, even though he is an ancient holy body like himself. For a moment, Yi Fan couldn't help feeling an urge to leave Lingsu Cave immediately. Seemingly aware of Yi Fan's mentality, Tang Ge, who had just reaped 2 waves of shock points from the other party, hurriedly said, Yi Fan, although it is difficult to open up the Sea of Bitterness with the ancient saint physique, once it is opened up, the prosperity of the Sea of Bitter Sea is by no means comparable to that of other monks. And I can feel that you are not far away from opening up the Sea of Bitterness. Stay in the Lingsu Cave and practice well. That source can help you. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 235. Dove occupies magpie's nest. Itchy skin should be hit. According to the original plot development, Yi Fan, who entered Lingsu Cliff to practice, opened up a golden sea of bitterness within a few months of taking Beikao Yi one after another. Now, with Tang Ge gifting him a fist-sized source, I believe he should be able to open up the Sea of Bitterness faster, and even advance the subsequent Life Spring realm. And if Yi Fan continues to stay in Lingsu Cave, the Demon Emperor's tomb will also be a great opportunity for him to grow up. So Tang Ge, who knew this situation, would naturally not break the opponent's fate. Fortunately, Yi Fan, who was a little impulsive just now, immediately calmed down after hearing Tang Ge's words. Thinking that Pan Bo was also in Lingsu Cave, he couldn't help but nodded with a wry smile. You're right, I haven't even opened up the Sea of Bitterness, so it's really not suitable for me to leave. Even so, Yi Fan was not discouraged. Because as the rich essence of life continuously emanating from his bosom entered his body, its effect was countless times stronger than the Beikao liquid he had taken before. He felt that he was really not far from a breakthrough. At this time, Tang Ge seemed to feel something, and immediately put away the aura that belonged to the Xingqiao realm on his body. He looked at Yi Fan and said earnestly, we say goodbye today, and we don't know when we will see each other again. I hope that when we meet again, you and I can create a new world in this world. I also hope that the friendship between us will last forever and will not disappear despite the erosion of the years. Tang Ge, we are friends today and will always be friends. Yi Fan, will never forget it. Hearing Tang Ge's words, Yi Fan also nodded solemnly. There was the sound of cranes in the distance. Immediately following the young monk who had left, he came again on a crane, looked at Yi Fan below, and said lightly, it's time, come back to the sect with me. After finishing speaking, without waiting for Yi Fan's consent, a rainbow wrapped around him and pulled him onto the crane. Then the crane led the 2 of them into after images and disappeared into the mist covering the mountains, and a faint shout came from it. Tang Ge, wait for me, I will definitely find you. Hearing Yi Fan's voice, Tang Ge, who had already withdrawn his gaze, couldn't help but shook his head with a wry smile. There are 2 worlds separated by an unknown distance, how can you find me? Let's say goodbye today, but I don't know when we will see you again. Immediately, he also turned around and walked towards the distance. With the ripples in the surrounding space, a door of light suddenly appeared and swallowed him directly. After Tang Ge disappeared, Guangmin disappeared again. Douluo Continent, starred out Great Forest. In the core area, in the middle of a huge lake, there is a green mountain like a small island. In the dense forest of the mountain peaks, with a sound of rumbling and rumbling, 2 figures are constantly fighting in it. The wind and thunder are surging. The rocks are flying. Where the 2 figures passed, The originally tall trees were constantly broken by the aftermath and fell to the ground. The fierce fighting didn't stop until the two figures collided again, and one of them was directly pushed back 100 meters away, shouting, "No more fight, no more fight." Upon closer inspection, the one who yelled 100 meters away turned out to be an ape covered with short, dense, earth-colored fine hair but whose skin reflected the luster of stone. This ape is 2 meters tall, has a human-like appearance, has arms as strong as hammers, and a pair of golden eyes. Although it showed anger and unwillingness on its face, as if it had lost the competition, its aura was full of oppression. On the opposite side of this stone ape, stood a middle-aged man. He is also as strong as a mountain, and his aura is much stronger than that of the stone ape. If Tang Ge were here, he would definitely be able to recognize that the middle-aged man was none other than the transformed sky blue bull python Daming. So obvious. The only one who can stay on this lake and mountain, and still be able to fight against Daming and lose a little bit of wind, is the Titan giant ape. Half a year later, it suddenly changed into its current appearance, apparently because the blood of the golden-eyed stone ape was successfully activated after taking the golden-eyed stone ape bloodline fruit. In other words, Ming should no longer be called the Titan giant ape, but should be called the golden-eyed stone ape. It's just that it seems that Ming is not at all satisfied with his current appearance because he has just evolved. Although he knew that his strength had improved, his domineering and mighty body had disappeared, and now his body looked too weak. What's even more ridiculous is that Daming actually said that he still looks good. Why do he and Miss Xiao Wu both like human beings so much? Under the irritability of thinking in his heart, Ming couldn't help scratching his ears and cheeks. This is one of the reasons why it doesn't like the way it looks like at the moment. On the other hand, Daming, who turned into a middle-aged man, was very satisfied with Ming's current strength and appearance. Because for half a year, he was the one who stood by Ming's side and witnessed the evolution of his bloodline with his own eyes. Even the unleashed bloodline fluctuations, even he who has evolved into a flood dragon can feel the suppression on the bloodline. But fortunately, through the fight just now, Daming has proved with his strength that even if Ming evolves from a titanic giant ape to a golden-eyed stone ape, his elder brother will always be his elder brother. So looking at Ming, who was scratching his head and looking manic because he lost the competition, as the eldest brother, Daming planned to comfort and encourage him verbally. As a result, when he was about to speak, he suddenly saw space ripples behind Ming. This made Daming instinctively feel a strong crisis, and he couldn't help but remind him in alarm. Ming, be careful behind you." Hearing Daming's reminder, Ming also noticed the change in the space behind him. Without any hesitation, when it turned around, it immediately roared wildly, swung its right fist and smashed down heavily. The heavy punch fell, and the terrifying airwave hit, even the ripples in the space were stopped. But immediately, a figure suddenly appeared from the ripples in space. This figure didn't seem to expect that he would be attacked the moment he appeared, so he couldn't help being startled. He remembered that when he left half a year ago, there seemed to be no one else here, right? But after regaining consciousness, when he saw clearly the appearance of the person who was attacking him, the figure couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Yo, I haven't seen you for half a year, Xiaodan, you have become such a cute look. But being cute is not the capital of your arrogance. You actually attacked me when I just came back. It really is itchy. Itchy skin will be beaten." After the words fell, before Ming's fist like a heavy hammer dropped, he suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed it. Boom. Accompanied by a dull loud noise and a blast of air blasting outwards, this figure actually grabbed Ming's fist between his hands. End of this chapter. Chapter 236. The person who appeared suddenly was none other than Tang Ge, who had just returned from the world of shrouding the sky. But what he didn't expect was that there were two reckless men wantonly destroying the natural environment in the grove that was originally a place for him to cultivate. And one of the guys threw his fist at himself more daringly. How could Tang Ge endure this situation? So regardless of Ming, who was stunned for a moment when he saw his appearance clearly, after he stretched out his right hand to grab the opponent's fist, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from his body. Then, under Ming's disbelieving expression 100 meters away, Ming, who had turned into golden-eyed stone ape, had no resistance at all, and was directly lifted from the ground by Tang Ge. Boom. Accompanied by a deafening loud noise, Ming immediately had an intimate contact with the ground. Although due to his strong physique, the blow made a deep hole in the place, but Ming, who came back to his senses, didn't feel any pain. On the contrary, The self-esteem and anger in its heart were aroused all at once. According to Erming's thinking, it is also a soul beast that evolved from a titanic giant ape to golden-eyed stone ape, except for Erming, it is completely unprecedented. Coupled with the increased strength, Erming felt that even if he went to the human world, those so-called titled Douluo would be easily trampled by it. So under the burst of self-confidence, Tang Ge, who had been missing for half a year, suddenly appeared in front of him. Erming actually lost the fear he used to have, and instead became more ferocious, wanting to teach the human being in front of him a harsh lesson. Roar, accompanied by an ear-splitting roar, when it half climbed up from the deep pit with one hand supporting its body, the soul power in its body was released continuously. Under the effect of a strange fluctuation, the surrounding rocks and fallen trees floated into the air one after another. At the same time, Erming was also struggling to free the other fist that was tightly held by Tang Ge, but it was a pity that a stronger force was restraining it. This made it even more frenzied, causing all the floating rocks and trees to rush towards Tang Ge. 110 meters away. When Daming saw Tang Ge's strange appearance, he couldn't believe it. He remembered that this human being came here and chose to practice half a year ago, but then disappeared without a trace. Half a year later, Daming already thought that the other party had quietly returned to the human world. As a result, just now, this human suddenly appeared again. And besides the strange way of appearance, what shocked Daming even more was the incomparable terrifying power that the other party erupted in an instant. He knew how powerful Erming's punch was just now, even the human titled Douluo didn't dare to block it head-on. But it was this kind of fist that even the titled Douluo among humans dared not resist directly, but when it came to Tang Ge, he was lightly accepted by the other party. And no matter how Erming struggled, he couldn't break free from the fist held by the opponent. So seeing this scene, Daming instantly understood. The human named Tang Ge in front of him returned after disappearing for half a year, and his strength became more and more unfathomable. I'm afraid that if I go up by myself, I won't be able to be the opponent's opponent, right? Thinking of this, Daming's eyes were filled with sympathy when he looked at Erming, who had just crawled out of the pit and was going crazy. Tang Ge's right, this child is itchy and deserves to be beaten. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Daming and gained, shock points. Tang Ge, who was teaching Erming a lesson, couldn't help showing surprise on his face when the system prompt sounded in his head, and turned his head to look at Daming. When he found the shocked face of the other party and the sympathetic look in his eyes when he looked at Erming, he was instantly filled with satisfaction. Sure enough, compared with Erming, Daming is still the most generous. Tang Ge turned his attention to Erming after secretly feeling that his transformation pill and a bottle of emperor fluid were not in vain. Under the opponent's gravity-controlled talent, countless rocks and trees made the sound of puff 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 breaking through the air like a fairy scattering flowers, rushing straight at him. But this seemingly terrifying scene is completely a small scene in Tang Ge's eyes. So after ignoring Erming, who was still struggling, with a thought, the map of mountains, rivers and society in his body that had been silent in Kohaequan's eyes suddenly shook, and he came out of the body directly. And because of the absorption of more than 100 divine patterns, the map of Shamshiji at this time is no longer what it used to be. As soon as it appeared, surging divine power was continuously released from it, rushing towards the surroundings like waves. As soon as countless rocks and trees entered the impact range of this divine power, they were smashed to pieces in an instant. At the same time, under Tang Ge's control, the map of Shamshiji spread out like a big hand towards Erming, who was startled by the shock wave of divine power. Erming was rolled into a rice dumpling directly, and there were chains of divine patterns protruding from the picture of Shamshiji, and wrapped around its body. The sea of bitterness is churning. The divine spring spews. The divine pattern containing the powerful divine power of Tang Ge's Shaishan cultivation method instantly turned into chains of heaven and earth, forming invisible imprisonments on Erming's body wrapped in the map of mountains, rivers and land. The divine power above impacted into its body, not only suppressing the soul power of its 10-year-old soul beast, but also making it feel a strong death crisis. At this moment, Erming suddenly understood. The human in front of him is still as terrifying as before. Facing the threat of death, the original ferocious expression on its face suddenly subsided and turned into a pitiful expression. It looked at Tang Ge with eyes begging for mercy, and spoke weakly. Don't kill me, I was wrong. Finally realized it was wrong? When Tang Ge heard Erming's begging for mercy, he not only raised his eyebrows, but also showed a satisfied smile on his face. But he didn't release Shamshejita from imprisoning Erming, but took out a treasure from the system space that he hadn't used yet. This treasure is the Royal Beast Ring, an exquisite golden ring carved with dragons and phoenixes. Originally, Tang Ge didn't intend to use it. But looking at it now, compared with Daming, who has a stable personality and knows how to judge the situation, Erming, who was originally grumpy, became more bold and dishonest after he evolved into golden-eyed stone ape. So in order not to let his bloodline fruit go to waste, Tang Ge felt that it was better to ensure Erming. After the beast ring was taken out, he looked at Erming again, and said calmly, "Don't resist, just put this golden ring on, and I will forgive you for your rude behavior to me today." In the distance, Daming saw the beast ring in Tang's singer. He faintly felt that there was something wrong with the golden ring, and wanted to remind Erming, but in the end he didn't speak because of some scruples, and just let out a helpless sigh. But Erming didn't think too much, and nodded immediately when he heard Tang Ge's words. "I don't think I will resist, that's good." A smile appeared on Tang Ge's face, and he threw the beast ring towards Erming with a wave of his hand. End of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Period. Chapter 237. I'm not too late to come back, am I? The beast ring looked like a golden entity, but as soon as it touched Erming, who was suppressed by the Shamshiji map, it turned into golden light and rushed into the opponent's body. When it reappeared, it abruptly returned to its original shape, and wrapped around Erming's neck. Erming saw the extra golden collar around his neck. Although he felt a little uncomfortable, he was more curious and wanted to reach out to touch it. But it's a pity that it is still wrapped in the picture of Shamshiji, and it can't move its hands and feet at all. For a moment, Erming looked at Tang Ge with pitiful eyes again. Seeing this, Tang Ge released the shackles of the gods on Erming, and put the map of the mountains and rivers back together. However, through the short fight just now, he can be completely sure that his current strength has indeed reached the peak level among human soul masters. Even if you use this Huxin sword again, the existence above peerless Douluo will have no fear. This made Tang Ge very satisfied. As for Erming, who was dishonest just now, became honest after his hanging and beating, and the beast-controlling ring worn around the opponent's neck was even more of a magic spell. As long as Tang Ge has a thought, he can instantly end Erming's life through the beast ring. In the distance, Daming hurried over. He looked at the golden ring on Erming's neck, and finally couldn't help but feel worried, so he asked, "Brother Tang, what is this thing on Erming's neck?" "It's just an ornament. As long as Erming doesn't move and dares to yell at me in the future, it won't have any effect on it," Tang Ge said with a smile. "What if you dare to yell? We'll be beaten, or we'll die?" Daming couldn't help thinking about another meaning in Tang Ge's words. Then he shuddered, and immediately shouted sharply at Erming, who was not knowing why. "I want to listen to Brother Tang's words in the future, don't you know? Don't yell at Brother Tang again, otherwise I won't have you as a brother in Ming Dynasty." Erming was very wronged. Obviously he lost and was beaten again, but why no one came to comfort him? Just looking at Daming with a stern face, Erming nodded obediently. "Understood." After hearing this, Daming breathed a sigh of relief. Then he took the initiative to change the topic and asked Tang Ge curiously, "Brother Tang, where have you been for the past 6 months? Why didn't you say anything when you left? And just now, the way you appeared, how could it appear out of nowhere?" Speaking of this, Daming still feels very incredible when he thinks of Tang Ge, who suddenly appeared with the fluctuation of the void. The opponent appeared completely out of thin air. Regarding this, Tang Ge just smiled and said nothing. Although if you say that you have just returned from another world, you will definitely usher in a big wave of shock value. But Tang Ge feels that this kind of going to another world is still a bit unimaginable, and it is too shocking. No matter what you do, it's better to keep a low profile. It's only a shock value of, and he doesn't care about it at all. Seeing Tang Ge's smiling and silent look, Daming also guessed that his question touched the other party's secret. So he stopped asking any more questions, and immediately began to take the initiative to tell what happened in the past 6 months. However, most of them are about Erming's evolution process and the new abilities he acquired after absorbing the bloodline fruit. As a Titan great ape, Erming has the ability to control gravity. Now, with the evolution of the bloodline, it has become a golden-eyed stone ape. Not only has its ability to control gravity been improved, but it also has more means to control the rocks and rock possession. In addition, as long as Ming stands on the ground, he can even gain the boost of the power of the ground, and quickly recover his consumed soul power. So in order to further understand Ming's newly acquired ability, Tang Ge beat Ming himself. In the end, Ming was directly beaten into self-imposed isolation, clutching his swollen face and fleeing from the mountain in the lake in a grieved manner. But Daming felt a lot easier when he saw him. Immediately, he looked at Tang Ge again and asked, "Brother Tang, do you want to stay here and continue to practice in seclusion?" "No, I'm going back to the academy." Tang Ge shook his head. But then he seemed to think of something, and suddenly said with a smile, "How about it, Brother Niu? You have now turned into human form, with this appearance and your own strength. Even if you go out, you will not be discovered. So you want to go to our academy with me and meet your little sister Wu by the way?" Hearing Tang Ge's words, Daming was a little moved. But then he seemed to have some scruples and shook his head. "No, I'm used to staying here, and I'm afraid I won't be able to adapt if I go to your human world. It's up to you to decide, but if you leave Stardao Great Forest and want to find me in the future, you can go directly to Shrek Academy in Heavendao Imperial City." Regarding Daming's thoughts, Tang Ge didn't speculate too much. Since the other party didn't want to leave, he didn't bother to persuade him, and said goodbye to the other party directly after talking off topic for a while, soared into the sky and flew towards the outside of the Stardao Forest. Seeing Tang Ge gradually disappearing, Daming looked away, turned around and left the mountain peak in the lake. He was going to find Ming to comfort him well. Heavendao Empire, Heavendao Imperial City. Compared with half a year ago, Shrek Academy's atmosphere became more tense as the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy competition got closer. And for the Shrek 9 monsters cultivating here, it is also the most critical period. In addition to Daimyo who had already entered the Soul Sect stage, Oscar, Tang San and Ma Hongjin also raised their soul power to level 40th one after another. Today will be the time for them to enter the Sunset Forest together to obtain the Soul Ring. Early in the morning, everyone had already gathered at the gate of Shrek Academy. When they thought that they would also become Soul Masters of the Soul Sect level, they immediately became excited. It's just that the only regrettable thing is that after half a year, Tang Ge, who went out to practice, has not returned to the academy. At this time, with the sound of footsteps, Flender, Zhao Wuji, Yu Zaigang and Liu Erlong, who were in charge of this operation, walked over from a distance. When he came in front of Tang San's 8 people, looking at these 8 children, the oldest was only 17 years old, and the youngest was only 13 years old. As the dean, Flender was filled with pride in his heart. It can be said that he was the one who accompanied these children all the way, and he knew the talents of these children best. Thinking of the appearance of a titled Douluo among these children in the future, even Flender, who is already in his 50s, couldn't help but feel excited and extremely looking forward to it. He didn't hesitate anymore, and immediately waved his hand, saying, "Since the deadline has expired, then we will go out." But before Flender finished speaking, a familiar voice with a smile suddenly came from outside the academy gate. "Dean, it seems that you are going out, so I'm not late, am I?" End of this chapter. Chapter 238 Whispering with Flender. Because Flender and Zhao Wuji are facing the entrance of Shrek Academy. So when this familiar voice full of laughter came, they also saw the speaker slowly walking in from outside. Then the 4 of them froze for a moment. Especially Zhao Wuji seemed to have seen something unbelievable, repeatedly rubbing his eyes with his hands, and then went on to look at the person who came before. It wasn't until he was sure he wasn't dreaming that he tentatively asked, "Tang Ge, Tang Ge?" As soon as these words came out, Tang San and the others who were about to set off for the Sunset Forest also froze for a moment. Then they immediately turned around and looked behind them. What caught their eyes was a young man about 1.8 meters tall. His skin was as white as jade, and his handsome appearance was shockingly heavenly. Men will be jealous when they see it. Women will be envious when they see it. Such a well-proportioned figure and such a handsome appearance are simply not something that ordinary people can have. But upon closer inspection, Tang Sanba and the others still felt a little bit of familiarity from the handsome boy's face that suddenly appeared. The other party was actually Tang Ge, who had only been away for half a year. But it's really incredible. Only half a year has passed. What exactly has Tang Ge experienced, and such a big change has happened? Finally, after recognizing his partner Tang Ge, Tang San and the others were all shocked. Immediately afterwards, a figure rushed out of the team quickly, and fell straight into the arms of Tang Ge, who was 5 or 6 meters away, and began to beat Tang Ge's heart with his small fists. "Tang Ge, you are so hateful, and you have been away for half a year without saying a word, and, why did you become more beautiful, even whiter than my skin? The fragrant wind blows towards my face." Holding Ning Rongrong, who suddenly fell into his arms and acted like a baby, Tang Ge couldn't help but chuckled and stretched out his hand to rub the other's hair, teasingly said, "What? If you really want to study me, at least we have to wait until night. Right now, everyone is still watching us." Who wants to study you? Ning Rongrong, who just wanted to lie in Tang Ge's arms for a while longer, heard Tang Ge's teasing, and after recovering, she finally remembered that there were classmates and teachers behind her. She couldn't help but blushed, and punched Tang Ge again with her small fist, before struggling to retreat 2 meters away. Not far away, Zhu Huqing and Lin Yuchen were also extremely happy because of Tang Ge's return. It's just that compared to Ning Rongrong, the two of them still had too many worries after all, and they didn't run over like Ning Rongrong. However, the beautiful eyes they looked at Tang Ge were full of tenderness. After Tang Ge noticed it, he naturally returned the meaningful eyes of the second daughter, which immediately made the second daughter's pretty face blush, and she couldn't help lowering her head. At this time, Tang San and the others also came back to their senses. Then they came over one by one and hugged Tang Ge, expressing their lovesickness and worries for half a year apart. But when hugging with Oscar and Ma Hongjin, these two actually started to touch Tang Ge, and Tang Ge couldn't help but give each of them a shudder because of the drooling look a few meters away. Seeing the happy appearance of Tang Ge and Tang San together, Flender immediately expressed emotion, and said, "It's good to be young. Seeing them, I suddenly miss our adventurous life on the mainland together." Hearing Flender's words, Yu Zhigang felt the same way. But it seemed that he felt something, and he who wanted to speak became silent again, and involuntarily turned his body to the other side. Standing in the direction Yu Zhigang deliberately avoided was Liu Erlong. Seeing this scene, she immediately snorted dissatisfied. "It's good for a big boy to be taller, but why is his skin so white? It looks like a girl, without a bit of masculinity. I, Erlong, have met a lot of men in my life. It doesn't matter if they are ugly or old, but what I hate the most is the kind of indecisive man, not happy at all." Obviously, Liu Erlong's remarks were mainly aimed at Yu Zhigang. After hearing this, Flender and Zhao Wuji couldn't help but look at the expressionless Yu Zhigang, shaking their heads and smiling wryly. But Tang Ge, who was talking to his classmates not far away, was immediately dissatisfied when he heard it. His skin was fair and he looked like a girl. Isn't this just talking about him? I was shot while lying down? It's just that his skin is fair and he looks like a girl. Tang Ge recognized both of these 2 points. After all, even Oscar and Ma Hongjin almost fell under his current charm. But Liu Erlong said that he didn't have any masculine aura. Tang Ge firmly disagreed with this statement. After all, he was only 14 years old, he didn't even reach adulthood. What masculinity does he want? Being handsome and pleasing women is Tang Ge's current exclusive. But well, if you really want to look masculine, he is still not empty, especially in some aspects. Thinking of this, Tang Ge immediately walked towards the 4 of Flender with a smile on his face. When he came in front of the 4 of them, he ignored Liu Erlong, who had turned into Tigress, but looked at Flender next to him. "Dean, let's find a quiet place to talk for a while." Looking for a quiet place to talk for a while? For Tang Ge's proposal, Flender was stunned, not knowing what the little guy in front of him was paying attention to. But after all, he was his student, and he didn't think much about it when he came back to his senses. He thought that the other party had something personal to tell him, so he nodded and agreed. Immediately, the two left the team together and went to a dark corner not far away. After a while, Tang Ge and Flender began to have a heated discussion. But because they deliberately lowered their voices, the topic of discussion was not heard, but the way Flanders was dancing excitedly was seen by everyone. Originally Tang San and the others were very curious, but after seeing this scene, their hearts felt more like being scratched, and couldn't help it even more. Even the little fat man Ma Hongjin lay down on the ground, and began to eavesdrop with his ear on the ground. During this period, even Liu Erlong couldn't help using her soul power to improve her hearing, but what made her face dark was that she couldn't hear a sound at all. For a moment, Liu Erlong couldn't help gnashing his teeth and cursing inwardly. That's abominable. They didn't even let me listen. However, the time when Tang Ge and Flender whispered did not last too long. When they returned to the team, Tang Ge had a peaceful smile on his face from beginning to end, while Flender's face was flushed because of excitement. And he didn't give Tang San and the others a chance to ask. As soon as he came back, he couldn't wait to wave his hand. Okay, since Tang Ge also returned to the team in time, let's set off to Sunset Forest. End of this chapter. Chapter 239. Tell Liu Erlong a love story. Because the Sunset Forest is very close to the Heaven Dao Imperial City, it has completely become a place for soul masters from the Heaven Dao Imperial City and nearby cities to hunt and kill soul beasts to obtain soul rings. However, compared with the largest Star Dao Forest in the center of the mainland, the Sunset Forest is still quite inferior. Its plant density is not only scattered, but even the quality of spirit beasts is not high. Most of them are between 1,000 and 10,000 years old, and few of them are more than 10,000 years old. This is also because the soul masters didn't know how to restrain themselves and slaughtered wantonly. If he hadn't considered that there was still half a month left before the Soul Master Academy Elite competition, Flender would not have chosen Sunset Forest, but had taken Tang San and the others directly to the Star Dao Forest. After all, there is a greater chance of finding a suitable spirit ring for the students there. Thinking in this way, after coming out of the Heaven Dao Imperial City, Flender and his party quickly came to the Sunset Forest by relying on Oscar's flying ability of dreaming and dreaming. At this time, all the talents landed one after another. Tang San, Daimyo Bei and the 8 of them immediately assigned tasks according to the previous training method, and began to search while moving forward. But Tang Ge stayed in the tutor team and followed closely behind them. Among them, because of Lin Yuchen's martial soul guiding the direction, and the sparse and easy-to-walk jungle, the group of people did not go wrong. Soon, the day passed. They searched along the way and encountered many soul beasts, but the quality was not high, and the oldest soul was just over 1,000 years old. As the gifted students of Shrek Academy, let alone Tang San, even Oscar and Ma Hongjin didn't look down on such level of spirit beasts at all. Just at this time, the sky gradually darkened. Seeing the dejected looks of all the students, Flender stopped immediately and said, "Let's rest for one night, and we will continue to search tomorrow." With that said, he took out 2 camp tents from his soul tool and prepared to set up camp on the spot. Seeing this, Tang Ge sighed helplessly in his heart. To bring only 2 tents, this dean is really stupid. You must know that he knows how to develop according to the original plot. Because of the 2 tents, there will be one for the students and one for the instructors. Originally, Liu Erlong didn't give up on Yu Gang, and Yu Gang acted like a playing hard to get scumbag. The 2 of them stayed together to burn firewood, so nothing happened. When the 2 of them wanted to make trouble, Flender was also there, but the other party was able to pretend to be asleep and bear it. Is this something a man can bear? And even if Flender only had unrequited love for Liu Erlong, Tang Ge looked at Flender at the moment and only took out 2 tents in a foolish way. He also suddenly seemed to see a large piece of green grassland appearing on the opponent's head. I can't bear it. So Tang Ge could only walk in front of Flender before he opened his mouth, and took out 1 tent after another from the system space. These tents add up to exactly 13, and they are all small tents suitable for 1 person to rest. But who would carry so many tents with them when they have nothing to do? Doesn't it take up space? For a moment, when Zhao Waoqi, Tang San, and Daimyo Bei who had just gathered looked at Tang Ge, their eyes were full of weirdness. But Tang Ge didn't care, and said to Flender with a smile, "Dean, put away your tent, just use mine." Just use yours, because Flender was puzzled. He wanted to say something, but when he noticed that the other party was making eye contact with him, he agreed to the 1 person 1 tent plan. Then with everyone's cooperation, the 13 tents were quickly set up, and the fire was ignited. Liu Erlong was in charge of leading a few girls to prepare the food for the night in this way. By the time they had enough food and drink and had done their protective work for the night, the sky had completely darkened, and the roar of soul beasts could be faintly heard in the distance. However, Mr. Zhao Waoqi volunteered to personally watch the night, and everyone slept peacefully after returning to their respective tents. It's just that in the middle of the night, after everyone fell asleep, a figure suddenly left the tent and quietly got into another tent not far away. Who, in the tent, Liu Erlong, who was practicing cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes when he heard footsteps. But just when she was about to drink it out, a hand quickly reached out to cover her mouth, and whispered in her ear, "Teacher Erlong, it's me, Tang Ge." Hearing these words, Liu Erlong, who was tense and almost ran away, regained his composure. Under her beautiful eyes, Tang Ge, who had sneaked in just now, smiled and withdrew his slightly slippery hands, wiped the quilt beside him, and explained. "Teacher Erlong, don't think too much, I just want to talk to you in private. He ran into my tent suddenly at night, and told me not to think too much." Hearing Tang Ge's explanation, Liu Erlong's breathing became stagnant, and he almost couldn't help but slap him. But when you think about it, the other party is only a 14-year-old kid, and when her son looks too young, she really doesn't have much to think about. In this way, Liu Erlong's angry mood gradually calmed down. But she still said with a cold face, "Is there anything that you can't say during the day and have to wait until night? Could it be that you want to tell me what you said to Boss Fu during the day?" "Of course not," Tang Ge thought to himself. However, upon hearing the other party's words, he felt relieved for Dean Flender. No matter what, it seemed that Flender's hard work for the past 6 months was not in vain. After all, how can a woman who is not interested in you care about what other people say to you? Thinking of this, Tang Ge suddenly said with a smile, "Teacher Erlong is so pretty, it would be unsightly to keep a sullen face, and if a woman keeps smiling, if she has a baby in the future, she will definitely give birth to a healthy and cute baby." "What do you know about giving birth to a baby?" Liu Erlong couldn't help frowning. But then her tense face relaxed, and she managed to squeeze out a smile, holding back her impatience and urging softly, "Little guy, stop talking nonsense. If you have something to say, hurry up." Tang Ge felt that the timing was about right, so he stopped beating around the bush, and immediately released his 5 black and 1 red soul rings without hesitation. The dazzling red light of the 10-year soul ring shone into Liu Erlong's eyes, causing her to widen her beautiful eyes in shock, and even her small cherry mouth could open enough to stuff a duck again. If it wasn't for the lack of a mobile phone in his hand, Tang Ge really wanted to take a picture of Liu Erlong's shocked appearance at the moment. And listening to the system notification sound in his mind, he felt even more elated. "Finally got enough shock value of!" Immediately after stretching out his hand to shake Liu Erlong, who was in a daze to wake up, Tang Ge began to make changes based on what he saw and heard, and sorted out a poignant love story. He slowly told Liu Erlong this poignant love story. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 240. I didn't, you nonsense. To tell the truth, this was Tang Ge's first time telling a story, but he really overestimated himself. After he spoke, he realized that he was not the kind of person who could tell a good story at all. Fortunately, because of the 10-year soul ring just now, Liu Erlong was still in a daze for a while, and he didn't hear the extremely obvious loopholes in Tang Ge's story at all. At the end, when Tang Ge talked about the pair of brother and sister he met when he went out to practice, regardless of the prejudices of the world, Liu Erlong finally came to his senses. Then she was overjoyed, and couldn't help asking, "Then what? Is this brother and sister happy together? Don't the people in the family behind them object?" Regarding Liu Erlong's urging, Tang Ge continued to tell. This brother and sister were united because of love regardless of prejudice, and they hide away from the world, hiding in a paradise that no one can find. I also accidentally entered this paradise, and was invited by the brother and sister to stay there temporarily. But at this point, his voice paused slightly, and his originally happy expression gradually became serious. Seeing this, Liu Erlong's heart skipped a beat, and he said anxiously, "What about later? Later, my sister, who was 10 months pregnant, gave birth to a boy. It would have been a joy and celebration, but unfortunately, the new baby was a freak. The boy's legs were shrunken, his head was as big as a ball, and his eyes were bulging. He looked like a shark crawling out of hell. At that time, the elder brother thought that God was punishing him for violating secular ethics and insisting on being united with his sister, which turned his child into a monster. Although at the beginning, in order to take care of his sister's mood, even though he saw the child looked like a monster, he still took care of the child tenderly with his sister. But as time went on, the younger sister could feel that the relationship between her and her brother began to weaken. Even every time when taking care of the children, the younger sister can find that the elder brother looks like he is out of his mind. The other party doesn't seem to care about him as much as before, and he is still in a daze at the exit of Xanadu from time to time. In the end, the elder brother left. And for some reason, he went to an old lover he met before marrying his sister, and began to pursue his own career. The younger sister did not stop her, and let her elder brother leave the paradise, while she stayed with her poor child. Tang Ge spoke slowly, while Liu Erlong listened quietly. But the more she listened, the paler her face became. In the end, she didn't even realize that she had bitten her lip at some point, and there was a trace of blood oozing out. She just clenched her fists and kept repeating, "How could this be? How could this be? They are clearly in love with each other, so why does God torture them like this? Even if the child is a monster, it is their own after all. Why was that elder brother able to leave their mother and son so ruthlessly while leaving alone? Could it be that the sincere feelings before were so unworthy of cherishing?" Then, as if thinking of something, Liu Erlong suddenly raised his head and looked at Tang Ge. She said with anticipation in her eyes, "Tang Ge, tell me, if the two brothers and sisters don't want children, can they still love each other as before and grow old together?" Tang Ge shook his head. The two brothers and sisters are both from big families, and although they joined together regardless of secular prejudices, the idea of having children and carrying on the family line is inherent. So no matter how much they love each other, they still feel that if there is no child in their life, it will still be an imperfect love. Teacher Erlong, I want to ask you, have you never thought that one day you can have a child of your own? Having said that, he looked straight at Liu Erlong with a serious expression on his face. Liu Erlong trembled and almost collapsed on the ground. She really wanted to deny Tang Ge's words, but as she kept asking herself, she opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. In her mind, the cute and playful appearances of the children Tang San, Xiao Wu and Rong Rong outside appeared involuntarily. Is it your own child? For a moment, Liu Erlong's heart became extremely painful, and he really wanted to rush out of the tent and cry loudly. She doesn't know why God treats her like this. Is the worldly prejudice really that important? Can no matter how deep the feelings are, they can't stand the test of time? Or is it really me who is wrong? Shouldn't I be extravagant to get this kind of feeling that is not recognized by the world? On the opposite side, seeing Liu Erlong's painful appearance, Tang Ge couldn't help but sigh in his heart. But he continued to speak, "Principal Erlong, although I am not very old, I understand that if two people really love each other, they will not abandon each other because of any shortcomings of the other. If two people really love each other, they will tolerate each other's shortcomings, let alone their own flesh and blood. But during the period of time I lived in that paradise, I could see that even though the elder brother had feelings for his sister, he was still wary of worldly prejudices. If it weren't for his younger sister's active pursuit and constant persuasion, perhaps his elder brother would not be with her even if he had feelings for her. The man's hesitation comes to the end, and the one who gets hurt will always be the woman, and the twisted melon will not last forever. Sometimes learning to give up is not a relief. What's more, besides Xanadu, there is a man who always loves and silently blesses that brother's sister. Perhaps this man is the most suitable candidate for that brother and sister. Between loving and being loved, if I can choose for that brother and sister, I really hope I can choose to be loved." Teacher Erlong, that's all for the story I'm telling. It's getting late now, you should rest well, I won't stay here to disturb you. After speaking, regardless of Liu Erlong's consent, Tang Ge got up and walked out of the tent. As a result, as soon as he got out of the tent, he saw Ning Rongrong who was eavesdropping outside. The other party was blushing and looked at a loss because of being smashed. Tang Ge couldn't help being a little amused, and walked directly in front of the other party, pinching the other party's nose. What are you doing here instead of resting in your tent so late? I'm anxious, I just passed by here accidentally. You don't think too much." When Ning Rongrong said these words, she almost hid her head in the two hills in front of her heart. Tang Ge raised his eyebrows and teased, "What's the matter? I think you wanted to sneak into my tent, but you saw me in Teacher Erlong's tent, so you came here to eavesdrop. You're talking nonsense. Who wants to sneak into your tent?" Hearing Tang Ge's teasing words, Ning Rongrong couldn't help stamping her feet anxiously. Her pretty face turned red. But soon, she seemed to think of something, and suddenly threw herself into Tang Ge's arms desperately, and beat Tang Ge's heart with her small fists. End of this chapter. Chapter 241 Chicken Soup After Another. HMPH. I just want to sneak into your tent, and not only do I want to sneak into your tent, but I also want to sneak into your heart. Never, ever, never let you forget me. After throwing herself into Tang Ge's arms, Ning Rongrong beat Tang Ge's heart with her small fists, while saying coquettishly and capriciously. In the end, she opened her mouth and bit Tang Ge's right arm suddenly. As a result, An exclamation suddenly sounded. Seeing Ning Rongrong covering her mouth and glaring at herself with angry beautiful eyes, Tang Ge couldn't help shrugging her shoulders, and said helplessly, "You little milk dog, don't you know that you can't bite people casually? Why are you so hard there? It hurts me." Ning Rongrong originally wanted to leave her own mark on Tang Ge's arm, but the bite just now was like biting on a rock, almost breaking her teeth. It hurts so much that she doesn't want it. Hearing Tang Ge's words now, Ning Rongrong's aggrieved eyes began to burst into tears, and her voice was full of crying. Seeing this, Tang Ge quickly comforted him, "My dear baby, don't be angry, it's all my fault. I apologize, and I will criticize. And don't you want me, here, let you bite?" As he said that, he directly put his mouth together, making a look of "Know it as you like." As a result, Ning Rongrong, who was about to cry, was suddenly amused by Tang Ge's appearance, wiped the tears from her eyes, and blushed pretending to speak in disgust. "HMPH. It smells so bad, people don't bite it, really don't bite, don't bite. Don't bite, that's fine if you don't bite." In the end, Tang Ge pretended to be disappointed, and was about to raise his head. But at this moment, Ning Rongrong, who had been refusing all this time, suddenly moved closer to his little head, kissed him hard on the mouth, and then took 2 or 3 steps back quickly. "How, woman?" After Tang Ge realized it, he was secretly proud in his heart. But he didn't forget the foreshadowing just now, just happened to meet Ning Rongrong, who was eavesdropping here again, and the plan in his heart was gradually perfected. So taking advantage of the heat, Tang Ge immediately took the initiative to change the subject, and asked Ning Rongrong, "Rongrong, did you hear the conversation between me and Teacher Erlong just now?" Hearing Tang Ge's question, Ning Rongrong, who was still so ashamed and wanted to hide, heaved a sigh of relief. Although her face was still flushed, her violently fluctuating mood calmed down completely, and she shook her head directly. "I just came here, didn't you hear me?" "But, Tang Ge, what's the matter with you looking for Teacher Erlong so late?" Speaking of this, Ning Rongrong's beautiful eyes were filled with doubt and curiosity again. Tang Ge smiled faintly, and whispered a few words in Ning Rongrong's ear. Then he urged, "Remember, after you go in, no matter whether Teacher Erlong asks you any questions or not, you should try to tell the other party what I just told you." "Do you really want to say that?" Ning Rongrong was a little hesitant. Tang Ge pinched her nose and said with a smile, "I haven't seen you in the past 6 months. If you do what I say, I will let you sleep in my tent tonight." "Really?" Ning Rongrong's eyes lit up all of a sudden, very pleasantly surprised. But then she remembered that she was still a little girl and should be reserved, so she snorted again, pretending to be disdainful. "Cut, people don't care about it, okay? I know you don't care about it, I begged you to do it, go in quickly. If you don't go in again, I'll just pretend I didn't say anything." Seeing Ning Rongrong's arrogant appearance, Tang Ge couldn't help crying and laughing. Only now Ning Rongrong nodded in satisfaction, and then went straight into the tent. But Tang Ge turned and left contentedly. However, he didn't go back to his tent directly, but spent a long time in the other 2 tents where girls obviously lived. It was not until late at night that Tang Ge returned to his tent. Ning Rongrong didn't know all of this. When she entered Liu Erlong's tent according to Tang Ge's arrangement, Liu Erlong was still immersed in the poignant love story just now, and his face was already soaked by the tears that fell down. Seeing this scene, if Tang Ge had not told herself part of the situation when she came in, she must have thought that Tang Ge was bullying Teacher Erlong. But Ning Rongrong was also the first time seeing Teacher Erlong in such a desperate and helpless manner. He hesitated for a while, wondering if he should walk over. But Liu Erlong saw Ning Rongrong coming in from the outside. She didn't try to hide her embarrassment at the moment, but looked at Ning Rongrong with helpless and painful eyes, and made a hoarse voice. "Rongrong, the teacher wants to ask you a question. If you met a man you love, and a man who loves you, who would you choose in the end?" Hearing Liu Erlong's inquiry, Ning Rongrong instinctively wanted to answer that she chose the man she loved. But when she thought about Tang Ge's explanation before she came in, she gritted her teeth and said, "If it was my choice, I would choose the man who loves me. Because Dad said that the man you love may not always treat you well, but the man who loves you will definitely treat you as a treasure. Although I am still young, I understand that as a woman, what I pursue in this life is not a man who can always love and take care of himself. What is happiness? Happiness is that even if you are old and sick, even if you are bedridden for a long time, there is still a man who will never reject you and dislike you sitting next to you, taking care of you and caring about you in obscurity." Speaking of this, Ning Rongrong couldn't help but plunge herself into a dreamy scene, and a smile full of happiness gradually appeared on her small face. And Liu Erlong was completely silent after hearing these words. There was a hint of confusion on her originally desperate and painful face, and the last sentence Ning Rongrong said just now, as well as the things she had done, kept replaying in her mind. Could it be that I did something wrong? Seeing Liu Erlong's confused and helpless look, Ning Rongrong finally walked over, sat down and gently hugged Liu Erlong's arm. She whispered, "Teacher Erlong, I don't know what happened to you, and I don't know how to comfort you. But if some things can't be forced, why do you have to work hard? Even if you get it in the end, it is destined to not last long. And there are only so many times when a woman is in her prime. If in such a beautiful time, there is no man who loves herself to cherish herself and treat herself well, wouldn't it be a pity in life?" After saying these words, Liu Erlong's absent-minded eyes gradually regained focus. She looked at Ning Rongrong, was silent for a while, and then suddenly said, "Did that boy Tang Ge teach you to say these words?" As soon as these words came out, Ning Rongrong was caught off guard. She couldn't help feeling a little flustered, and stammered an explanation. "No, it's not Tang Ge, I said it myself. And I have always regarded you as a relative or even a mother, teacher. I really don't want to see you so sad." End of this chapter. Chapter 242. Why are you so stupid? When these words came out, even Ning Rongrong herself didn't believe it. Not to mention Liu Erlong. But Liu Erlong burst out laughing suddenly, couldn't help stretching out his hand to rub Ning Rongrong's head, and said softly, "Okay, teacher, I'll take it as your girl who said it. But you're right, isn't the goal of a woman in her life to find a man who has always been good to her? So the teacher must not be sad anymore." Ning Rongrong nodded quickly. Looking at Ning Rongrong, who was only 13 years old, the maternal love in Liu Erlong's heart was drawn out uncontrollably. His eyes were full of anticipation. "Then can you call the teacher mother?" It seems that because of the early loss of his mother, coupled with the soft light in Liu Erlong's eyes that resembles his mother, the eyes of Ning Rongrong, who also yearns for mother's love, suddenly turned red. She suddenly threw herself into Liu Erlong's arms, crying out, "Mom!" Well, Mom promised Rongrong that she will never be sad again. Tears also slipped out of Liu Erlong's eyes. Her originally blocked mood also instantly normalized with Ning Rongrong's mom. She patted the other person's back lightly with her hand, and said softly. Next, because the relationship between the two became close, Ning Rongrong immediately left in no hurry, and began to talk to Liu Erlong about her interesting experiences over the years, many of which were related to Tang Ge. Especially when she mentioned Tang Ge, the corners of her mouth that were inadvertently raised were full of joyful smiles. Seeing this, Liu Erlong couldn't help but secretly sighed. She could tell that the girl Rongrong had already had a deep affection for that kid Tang Ge, and she might be as hard to get away as she was back then. But in Liu Erlong's view, that kid Tang Ge is young, but full of love. He is not worthy of Rongrong's love at all. It's just that she didn't persuade, knowing that some things need to be experienced to know whether it is right or wrong. What's more, since he recognized Rongrong as his daughter, Liu Erlong would never let that kid Tang Ge hurt Rongrong. Over time, unknowingly, Ning Rongrong, who was lying in Liu Erlong's arms, had fallen asleep, breathing lightly. Liu Erlong pulled the quilt over and covered Ning Rongrong's body. Seeing that the other party was smiling happily while sleeping, he couldn't help muttering to himself. Girl, Mom will never let you get hurt." At night, the ignited fire crackled non-stop, and the light released illuminated the surroundings of the tent. Accompanied by the occasional roar of beasts in the distance, there are also bursts of snoring sounds coming from several of the tents, which are very loud. Zhao Waoqi, who was sleeping during the night vigil at the outermost edge of the tent, seemed to have noticed something, and suddenly opened his eyes. He stepped back quickly after standing up, and let out a loud shout. "There is a situation. Everyone be careful." As soon as he yelled out these words, a red flame sprayed over, passed by the place where Zhao Waoqi was sleeping, and rushed directly to a big tree behind. In an instant, the big tree was ignited and turned into a raging fire. At this time, the 9 Shrek monsters who were resting in the tent also woke up because of Zhao Wuji's shouting. Without any hesitation, they rushed out of the tent at an extremely fast speed and gathered together. Then everyone saw the culprit that caused the shock. 7 or 8 meters away, at the edge of the woods, a huge figure appeared at some point, and under the light of the fire, it was a huge scorpion. However, Compared with ordinary scorpions, its whole body is almost snow white, and waves of tyrannical aura continuously emanate from its body. Especially when this pale giant scorpion was crawling close to the ground, a tail made of condensed 9-section coccyx was raised high, with a fiery red tail hook connected to it, which looked extremely ferocious. The flame that rushed towards Zhao Waoqi just now spewed out from this tail of the giant pale scorpion. When he saw the appearance of the pale giant scorpion, Tang San's eyes lit up, and he said immediately, "Fatty, congratulations, tonight your 4th spirit ring has been obtained. If I'm not mistaken, this should be a soul beast about 4,000 years old, named the King of the Earth, and it belongs to the fire attribute soul beast. Moreover, it is extremely domineering and bloodthirsty, so it is definitely a top existence in the same level, and few other soul beasts dare to provoke it." So smart. Hearing Tang San's introduction, Mo Hongjin's eyes lit up. And beside him, Daimyo Bei was even more interested, clenched his fist and said, "Since it is a 1,000-year-old soul beast, then let me compete with him first." As he said that, he wanted to use his martial soul. But Tang Ge, who also came out of the tent, suddenly dodged in front of Daimyo Bei, directly blocking the other party's vision with his stalwart body. "Tang Ge, what are you?" Daimyo Bei was a little puzzled. Tang Ge looked back at him, grinned and said, "After practicing for half a year, it's been a long time since I let go of my hands and feet to stretch my muscles and bones. It just so happens that this Earth King looks thick and rough, and it should be able to let me barely move around." After speaking, regardless of whether Daimyo Bei agrees or not, he directly raised his feet and walked towards the King of the Earth 7 or 8 meters away. Every step he took seemed to attract space, and the aura around him began to continuously rise. Later, because of the huge movement, Flender, Uzia Gang, Liu Erlong and Ning Rongrong also came out of the tent. When he felt the aura emanating from Tang Ge, Flender couldn't help sighing, "I really didn't expect it. I haven't seen him for half a year, and this kid's strength has become stronger again." Obviously he wasn't worried about Tang Ge's comfort at all. It happened that Liu Erlong also came out, so Flender couldn't help but look over. Then he saw the pale face of the other party, and the red eyes that seemed to be from crying. His heart trembled with relief, and worry appeared on his face. Uzia Gang next to him also noticed Liu Erlong's situation. He lifted his foot but then put it down again. Seeing Uzia Gang's indecision again, and what Tang Ge said to him before, Flender suddenly gritted his teeth and walked over. When he came in front of Liu Erlong, he immediately said with concern, "Sister Erlong, why are you crying? Who made you angry? Did Uzia Gang say something to you again? It's disgusting. This guy clearly knows your feelings for him, but he still hesitates like this. He doesn't look like a man at all. No, I must talk to him well today, force him hard, and make sure his relationship with you is confirmed." After speaking, Flender wanted to turn around. But at this moment, Liu Erlong, who had just withdrawn his disappointed gaze from Uzia Gang, suddenly stretched out his left hand and grabbed Flender's arm. She looked at the handsome young man in front of her who had taken risks with her, but now she was starting to age, and she couldn't help recalling the experience of the other party defending herself everywhere in her mind. For a moment, tears flowed from the corners of Liu Erlong's eyes again, and he couldn't help muttering to himself, "Boss F, why are you so stupid? Ask for a monthly pass." End of this chapter. Chapter 243. A real man should punch to the flesh. Women are often the most emotional animals. Especially when you can't get what you want and are impacted by external forces, you will find that what you have been pursuing is actually not the most important thing to you. But the really important things are often on the sidelines, and the result is inadvertently missed. This is Liu Erlong's current mood. Originally, she still had a glimmer of hope for Uzia Gang, but as the other party hesitated for a moment, she suddenly remembered what Tang Ge said to her before. Coupled with Flender's active concern, the softness in Liu Erlong's heart was finally touched. He looked at the vicissitudes of life man in front of him who was once handsome, and tears fell from the corners of his eyes again. He couldn't help but mutter to himself and stretched out his right hand to caress the other's face. "Boss F, why are you so stupid?" But Flender never expected such a thing to happen. When Liu Erlong's soft hands touched his face, it was as if his whole body had been struck by lightning. His body froze suddenly and he didn't dare to move. But in Flender's heart, he couldn't help but yelled excitedly, "She touched me? Sister Erlong actually touched me?" Even if it is said that a man does not shed tears lightly, at this moment Flender's eye also slipped down a tear. He wanted to reach out and touch the face of his beloved in front of him as well, but thinking of the students nearby, and for some reason, he still resisted the urge in his heart. Listening to Liu Erlong's words, Flender naturally understood what he meant. But he still shook his head with a smile, and said gently, "If my stupidity can make Erlong me happy, then I, Flender, am willing to be stupid forever. No matter what, I will always care about you, Boss Fu. So if there is something unhappy, don't hold it back, you must speak it out, otherwise it will damage your body." Hearing Flender's words, Liu Erlong, who had already withdrawn his hand, completely lost his previous aggressiveness, and nodded obediently same time. Tang San and the others nearby who were originally paying attention to the Earth King also looked over involuntarily. Listening to the conversation between Liu Erlong and Flender, Oscar and Ma Hongjin were curious gossiping, wanting to know what happened from Ning Rongrong who came out with teacher Erlong. But Ning Rongrong ignored these people at all, and just looked at Tang Ge with resentful eyes. Obviously she completely missed the opportunity to be alone with Tang Ge. As for Tang San, who knew something about the relationship between Liu Erlong, Flender and Yu Xiaogang, he looked at Yu Xiaogang who had been silent all this time with worried eyes. He could clearly see that the teacher's body was trembling slightly, and the hands behind his back had already clenched into fists. The veins on the fist are exposed. Tang San wanted to go over to comfort the teacher, but Xiao Wu at the side suddenly reached out to hold him, and shook his head at him. "Third brother, we can't help with this matter, let the teacher solve it by themselves, we can only do this." Tang San could only nod helplessly. But at this moment, a loud bang sound suddenly sounded, which directly alarmed everyone. Flender also came back to his senses. When he realized that everyone's attention was on himself and Sister Erlong at the moment, he blushed even though he was thick-skinned, and quickly changed the subject. "Keep your eyes wide open. Tang Ge managed to make a move, you all should learn more from him about how to fight with his soul." Oscar and the others who failed to find out the gossip news were a little disappointed. However, they still turned their attention to the King of the Earth in front of him. 7 or 8 meters away. As the King of the Earth with thousands of years of soul beasts, he has a strong sense of crisis. So when Tang Ge activated his Hishin method to slowly release his aura, the terrifying aura contained in it immediately made the King of the Earth feel bad. It saw the human being walking towards him, instinctively stepped back, and wanted to turn around and run away. But Tang Ge finally made a move, and he had to show his real man side, so how could he waste this opportunity in vain? A real man should punch to the flesh. So when he saw that the King of the Earth wanted to escape, his face darkened, and as he stepped heavily on the ground with both feet, he flew into the air directly. And there was a crack that continued to spread outwards in place midair. Under the urging of the Zhishinfa, the waves in Tang Ge's golden sea of bitterness churned violently, and a steady stream of divine power gushed out from the eyes of the spring and flowed into his limbs and bones. Coupled with the power of the ancient holy body, he is completely like a giant mountain falling from the sky at this moment, smashing heavily towards the King of the Earth directly below. Before the person fell, the shock wave formed by the terrifying force kicked up a cloud of dust on the ground. The King of the Earth who was in it, as the death crisis was getting closer and closer, suddenly realized that he couldn't escape if he wanted to, so he could only fight to the death. So it suddenly stopped in its tracks, and after making a hoarse cry, its body was instantly glowing red. Then the Earth King centered on its body, and the air within a radius of tens of square meters was completely distorted, and the ground beneath him cracked even more rapidly. Faced with this sudden situation, Flender and others who were watching had to retreat more than 10 meters away. Because he had never seen Tang Ge make a move, even though he had heard that Douluo could be defeated by the other party before, Liu Erlong was still a little worried and annoyed when he saw the scene in front of him. The King of the Earth is a soul beast that has been around for thousands of years, and this kid doesn't even release his martial soul and soul ring. Could it be that he wants to give this soul beast rations? Flender, how on earth do you teach students? Unknowingly, Liu Erlong returned to his former strong woman character. On the side, hearing Sister Erlong's merciless reprimand, not only did Flender not feel ashamed, but his heart that had been worrying all the time was relieved a lot. This is the Erlong sister in his mind. However, Flender is still somewhat confident about his teaching ability. So facing Liu Erlong's questioning, he immediately explained with a smile. Sister Erlong, don't worry, if other students are so arrogant, I will really be angry, but Tang Ge is different, this mere King of the Earth is nothing in front of it, you sure? Liu Erlong looked suspicious. Flender couldn't help but reach out and stroked her hair, and said, "What? Don't you even believe your boss, Flender? Where are you going to touch your hand? Take it back." Liu Erlang glared at Flender, who was so frightened that Flender quickly withdrew his hand. But he didn't notice that when Liu Erlang turned his head to look at the King of the Earth in the distance, there was a flash of panic in those beautiful eyes. End of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244 Negative IQ. More than 10 meters away. At the moment when the Earth King burst out with red light, as the surrounding air was distorted, its two huge front claws were lifted up violently and hit the ground fiercely. Suddenly, a shock wave directly formed in the originally distorted air. This shock wave rushed to the person, causing the person to freeze uncontrollably. But it's a pity that the person falling down on it is not an ordinary person, but Tang Ge, a real man who wants to beat it to death with his fist. So when he saw Tang Ge, who still didn't slow down under his shock wave, the King of the Earth was so frightened that he gave up and continued to accumulate strength. With a burst of power in its body, the cracked ground beneath it exploded with a bang, and a crimson beam of light rose directly into the sky. This beam of light was more than 2 meters in diameter, and as soon as it appeared, it went straight to Tang Ge. The temperature released from the crimson beam of light was extremely high, like erupting magma, and even the surrounding air was burned and distorted. Even human soul masters dare not be hit by this beam of light. Seeing this scene, apart from Flender and Zhao Wuji who knew Tang Ge's true strength, Tang San and Dai Mubei's hearts tightened, and their eyes were suddenly full of worry. Especially the three daughters Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing and Lin Yuchen almost rushed straight up. But the next moment, they suddenly widened their beautiful eyes, and the worried pretty face instantly became stunned. The same goes for others midair. Faced with this sudden fire attack from the King of the Earth, Tang Ge seemed to have never noticed it, and his not particularly strong body was still falling rapidly. But the moment his feet came into contact with a red beam of light, a strange scene happened under a huge impact. Not only did the crimson beam of light released by the King of the Earth fail to knock Tang Ge away, but it was like a fragile piece of wood after being burned, and it collapsed quickly under the trampling of Tang Ge's feet. On the other hand, Tang Ge didn't have a trace of sparks left on his body, and his clothes and shoes were even more intact. In the end, he directly passed through the crimson beam of light that was completely shattered, and crashed down on the Earth King amidst the flames splashing everywhere. Hey! Terrifying power erupted from Tang Ge's feet, and the pain caused the King of the Earth to let out a mournful howl. Most of the entire huge body of the King of the Earth sank directly below the ground, and the two front claws danced quickly, trying to pat Tang Ge on his back. It can be seen that its body is too big, and Tang Ge's body is too small, so the two front claws waving can't touch Tang Ge at all under last resort. The King of the Earth could only use the high stinger on its tail to stab Tang Ge directly, and a red light spot reappeared at the tip of the tail. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge's eyes flickered with coldness. The moment Zizi, the King of the Earth, appeared in front of him, he suddenly stretched out his right hand to grab it, and broke it off forcefully. How powerful Tang Ge is at the moment is not even clear to him. But a huge boulder weighing 10,000 caddies was placed in front of him, and Tang Ge could smash it with one punch only by relying on the huge power brought by the ancient holy body. What's more, he is still running the method of covering the sky. So just hearing a click, the tail of the King of the Earth, which is regarded as a powerful attack method, was broken instantly in Tang Ge's hands without even being able to hold a breath. The next moment, the Earth King uttered another sharp mournful cry. Its small mung-bean-like eyes are full of panic and despair. It's just that no matter how the Earth King screamed or struggled, it was useless. Tang Ge, who landed on it, relied on his terrifying strength to hold his body firmly. After squatting down, his swinging right fist suddenly turned into shadows of fists boom, 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 boom. Next, the incomparably huge King of the Earth was no longer as fierce and domineering as before, and was completely reduced to a sandbag, and Tang Ge kept beating him with his fists. But Tang San and the others who saw this scene all gasped. So violent. That is the King of the Earth who has cultivated soul power for thousands of years, but he didn't even have the strength to resist under Tang Ge's fist, so he was beaten by Tang Ge wantonly. But from the beginning until now, Tang Ge didn't even use his martial soul and soul ring. This terrifying strength immediately made Tang San and the 8 of them realize that after another half a year, the gap in strength between them and Tang Ge became even bigger. Even Bei, who originally thought he would catch up with Tang Ge, couldn't help feeling powerless at this moment. But at the same time astonished, as a man, Bei and the others were full of envy when they saw Tang Ge beating the king of the earth with his fist. Among them, Mo Hongjin's eyes were starry, and he said extremely excitedly, "Sure enough, Boss Tang is still as domineering as ever. From now on, Boss Tang will be the object of my admiration." Ma Hongjin, a few meters away. The 3 daughters of Ning Rongrong, who had been worrying all this time, also breathed a sigh of relief after they came back to their senses. But when they heard Ma Hongjin's words, they seemed to think of something, and their pretty faces immediately turned red. And Liu Erlong, who was standing next to Flender, put away the annoyance in his heart after seeing Tang Ge's strength at this moment, and his charming face was full of amazement. Unbelievable. Really incredible. Vlad, where did you recruit this student? Your physical fitness is really too strong. Since I, Liu Erlong, established the Advanced Soul Master Academy, I haven't seen soul masters with strong physical fitness. But at the age of 13 or 14, even if it is pushed up to 20 or 30 years old, it has never been seen that this little guy can crush a 1,000-year-old king of the earth just by relying on his physical fitness. Fighting. As the Horn of Killing in the Golden Iron Triangle, Liu Erlong with the Fire Dragon martial spirit is extremely powerful, and his attacks are even more domineering. There are not many soul masters in her life who can convince her. But now seeing that Tang Ge, who was only 13 or 14 years old, instantly destroyed all the domineering methods of the King of Earth's attacks, Liu Erlong couldn't help but compare himself with the other party in his heart. Then she found that without using the spirit and spirit ring, she couldn't do the same thing as the other party. And because I have been confused by emotions. It wasn't until seeing Tang Ge's attack at this time that Liu Erlong realized in astonishment that he had forgotten an extremely important thing. The other party seemed to have released the spirit ring when he got into his tent before, right? In addition to the 5 black soul rings, it seemed that the 6th soul ring also had a red light and many more, red glow, 10-year soul ring? As the almost forgotten scene of that time resurfaced in his mind again, Liu Erlong's beautiful eyes suddenly widened, and there was an inconceivable expression in his eyes. If Tang Ge knew Liu Erlong's thoughts at this moment, he would definitely give him a classic comment speechlessly. A woman in love has a negative IQ? End of this chapter. Chapter 245 King of the Earth, I want to die. Next to him, hearing Liu Erlong's praise of Tang Ge, Flender, the dean, immediately felt honored. But he still held back the pride in his heart, and said very modestly, "What Erlong that you said is a bit exaggerated. This little guy Tang Ge is just a little bit better than ordinary geniuses, it's nothing. But even if it is only a little bit stronger, it is due to his own continuous efforts, coupled with my careful training. That's why I said, Sister Erlong, you don't have to worry about Tang Ge at all." As soon as these words came out, the others were fine, but Zhao Qi just rolled his eyes. This shameless old guy actually took all the credit for teaching Tang Ge in one sentence, and he really did everything he could to pick up girls. But in Zhao Qi's heart, apart from being speechless, he was more pleased. Although he knew something about the relationship between Liu Erlong, Flender and Yu Xiaogang, he preferred that Flender and Liu Erlong be together. After all, how long did Yu Xiao go to the academy just now? And Flender and Zhao Qi are good friends who have been partners for many years. So at this moment, seeing that Flender finally no longer just muttered in his heart like before, but chose to take the initiative to attack, Zhao Qi was naturally very happy. As for Flender, he naturally didn't know what Zhao Qi was thinking. He was just talking to Liu Erlong when he suddenly found that the other party didn't reply to him, so he withdrew his eyes from Tang Ge's attention and looked at Liu Erlong beside him. Then Flender noticed that Liu Erlong's face was dull at this moment, and the expression in his eyes clearly showed disbelief. He thought that something happened to the other party again. His heart tightened, and he immediately asked worriedly, "Second dragon girl, what's the matter with you?" Nothing happened. Hearing Flender's voice, Liu Erlong managed to regain his composure. She looked at the other party, suppressed the shock in her heart, and said, "Boss Fu, do you know the level of soul power of your student? Tang Ge told me half a year ago that he was level 59, but he has not had time to ask about his current strength." Although Flender didn't know why Liu Erlong asked such a question suddenly, he still didn't hide his words. As a result, Liu Erlong shook his head with a wry smile after listening. Compared with you, a student, I suddenly realized that half of our life is really wasted. Then she deliberately lowered her voice, and told Flender about the scene where she saw Tang Ge releasing the spirit ring. Naturally, when he learned that Tang Ge's soul power had not only broken through to Soul Emperor, but even the 6th soul ring was red, Flender gasped in shock. Red, 10-year soul ring. This kid actually got the 6th soul ring without saying a word in only half a year, and it's still at the 10-year level? How on earth did he do it? You must know that a 10-year soul ring is not comparable to a, year soul ring, and its owner was definitely a soul beast that was more powerful than Title Douluo during his lifetime. Not to mention Soul Douluo, even if Title Douluo went there in person, he might not be able to hunt down a 10-year-old spirit beast. So even if Flender knew that Tang Ge was very powerful, it was far beyond his own soul power level. But if it is said that the opponent can kill a 10-year-old soul beast now, Flender will not believe it even if he is killed. Therefore, he couldn't help but think of the ability to change the color of the soul ring displayed by Tang Ge when he was discussing the Soul Master competition with Tang Ge half a year ago. Could this be the way this kid deceived Erlong Mini? Thinking of this, and looking at Liu Erlong who was shocked and lost because of Tang Ge's red soul ring, Flender's heart twitched violently. Really? That kid's high-profile nature cannot be changed with a few words of persuasion. However, Flender guessed this situation by himself, and he was not completely sure. So he didn't tell Liu Erlong about this matter, but he quickly regained his composure and showed a proud smile on his face. You know, the most correct thing that I, Flender, did in my life was to accept Tang Ge into the academy. And I believe that with Tang Ge's talent, he can definitely become a Title Douluo before the age of 20. Not far away, Uzia Gang, who had been silent all this time, clenched his fists even more when he heard what Flender said. His gaze moved to Tang San in front even more involuntarily. Tang San, you must not let the teacher down. Tens of meters away, Tang Ge didn't know that Liu Erlong and Flender were discussing him. But in his mind, the system prompt sound appeared at the right time. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Liu Erlong and gained, shock points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Flender, and got, shock points. Tisk tisk. This Dean Flender is still not good, he can't even compare to a woman. Listening to the system notification sound in his head, Tang Ge punched the King of the Earth violently while secretly despising him in his heart. Soon, under the baptism of his fists like a storm, the King of the Earth, who was as big as a small mountain bag, was completely useless. Its entire huge body completely sank into the ground, dripping with blood, and had already given up resistance. If you look at the mung bean-sized eyes of the King of the Earth, you can find the despair and hopelessness in the eyes of the other party. It looked at those humans in the distance who were watching themselves being run away, as if saying, I want to die, please someone kill me. But Tang Ge discovered the situation of the King of the Earth. After confirming that the opponent had only one gasp left to breathe, he finally stopped attacking and jumped off the opponent directly. Turning his head to look at Ma Hongjin who was looking at him with an adoring face, Tang Ge was very satisfied, and immediately urged with a smile. Fatty, why are you in a daze? Hurry up and fuse your 4th soul ring. Hearing Tang Ge's urging, Ma Hongjin recovered, his face was full of excitement. But before that, he still turned his head to look at Flender, wanting to ask for Flender's opinion. Flender scolded with a smile, if you want to go there, see what I do, Tang Ge will not harm you, okay? When Ma Hongjin heard this, he stopped hesitating immediately, and ran towards the King of the Earth in a hurry. The next thing is also very smooth. Because the King of the Earth was completely hopeless after being beaten by Tang Ge, he only wanted to die, so facing the dagger stabbed by Ma Hongjin, it didn't have any resistance at all. Even at the moment before the death of the Earth King, there was a sense of relief in its eyes. Finally freed. Then, a purple soul ring floated out from the corpse of the Earth King. Seeing this, Ma Hongjin sat down cross-legged impatiently, and drew this purple soul ring to him with a hook, and began to fuse with it. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 246 The 4th Soul Skill, Phoenix Roaring Sky Strike. Because the King of the Earth wanted to die with all his heart, the purple soul ring condensed from it did not have the kind of backlash that Tang Ge encountered when he fused the soul ring of the human-faced demon spider. So the whole process of Ma Hongjin's soul ring fusion was very calm, even occasionally showing a wretched smile on his fat face. The rest is just a matter of time. Tang San and the others, who had a solid understanding of spirit ring knowledge, naturally understood that Ma Hongzhen's fourth spirit ring was a certainty. No one was worried about Ma Hongzhen's comfort. On the contrary, everyone was very curious about Tang Ge's strength. But before they asked, Flender spoke directly. It's still early, the rest of the night will be left to me and Tang Ge to take care of it, you all hurry back to the tent and continue to rest. When we wake up tomorrow morning, we will continue to look for suitable soul beasts. Hearing Flender's arrangement, Ning Rongrong, who originally wanted to go to Tang Ge to fulfill their previous promise, suddenly became unhappy. There are so many people here, why should my Tang Ge stay here? He must have been very tired after putting in so much effort just now, and he still won't let him rest. How nasty. As a result, just as Ning Rongrong showed her 4 small canine teeth, Liu Erlong at the side gently stroked her beautiful hair and spoke with a smile. Go to sleep with Mom. Hearing Liu Erlong's words, Ning Rongrong, who was going to be angry, became obedient all of a sudden. Immediately, she followed Liu Erlong back to the tent. While the others looked at the backs of the two leaving with bewildered expressions. When did Teacher Erlong become Ning Rongrong's mother? Even Tang Ge was surprised when he heard it. But soon he ran out of time to think about it. Because after everyone came back to their senses, they went back to their respective tents, except for Ma Hongzhen who was still merging the soul ring. Only Tang Ge and Flender were left outside. As soon as Flender withdrew his gaze from Liu Erlong's tent, he walked straight towards Tang Ge. Tang Ge, has your soul power level exceeded 60 now? As soon as he came over, he looked at Tang Ge with burning eyes and asked. Tang Ge's heart moved, and he immediately understood where Flender was shocked just now. It must be Teacher Erlong who told the other party about his spirit ring. Thinking of this, he didn't hide his clumsiness, and released his martial spirit and spirit ring with a smile. Because all the divine patterns condensed in the practice of Zishan method are inside the martial soul, so the abnormality of the mountain, river and community map cannot be seen from the surface. But as soon as the 6 spirit rings came out, it instantly caught Flender's attention. However, due to previous understanding, Flender was not shocked this time, but stared at Tang Ge's 6th crimson soul ring, and couldn't help but speak. Tang Ge, didn't you use that ability for the color of your soul ring? Dean, can't you feel it for yourself? Hearing Flender's words, Tang Ge frowned, and suddenly urged the aura of the 6th soul ring to envelope him. If it's just a 10,000-year spirit ring, Flender, who is a soul sage, is not afraid. But Tang Ge's 6th soul ring came from the giant spirit god, and its actual age definitely exceeded the 10-year-old. So even if he just enveloped Flender with his breath, Flender still felt a strong sense of suffocation without using his soul power. Especially the terrifying feeling as if facing the gaze of a god, almost frightened him so much that he couldn't help but knelt on the ground directly. In the end, Flender had to use his own soul power to barely catch his breath, and then hurriedly said, Okay, quickly take back your soul ring. Seeing this, Tang Ge smiled triumphantly, and then put all the soul ring and martial soul into his body. As the terrifying atmosphere subsided in an instant, Flender finally became relaxed. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and looked at Tang Ge with a smug smile, not only not angry, but full of relief. Tang Ge, you really didn't disappoint me. It's only been half a year since you've achieved such a level of soul power. I'm afraid I'm no longer your match, Dean, not afraid. But it's not my opponent at all. Hearing Flender's emotion, Tang Ge couldn't help thinking to himself. But he said modestly, the teacher is just too obsessed with love and neglects to practice. If he works harder, he will definitely be much better than the students. Flender, fortunately, he had a thick skin, so he pretended he didn't hear what Tang Ge said, and changed the subject directly. Don't worry about the teacher's affairs. What is your soul power level after you come back this time? Do you need us to help you? But in the middle of speaking, Flender stopped suddenly. Then, as if he had passed the climax-tide moment of his life, he waved his hand dully. It's a soul ring of 10 years, why bother me, the Dean, I'm asleep. After speaking, Flender walked towards his tent. Tang Ge didn't react until the person disappeared. Then he was speechless for a moment. Didn't we agree to watch the night together, so you just went back to sleep and left me here alone? Sure enough, treacherous and cunning. Although a little helpless, Tang Ge did not call out Flender who had returned to the tent. Isn't it just a night watch, just closing and opening the eyes? Immediately, He sat down cross-legged a few meters away from Ma Hongjin, and began to practice the method of covering the sky. In this way, it passed quietly overnight. The next day, early in the morning, when the sky was just slightly bright and everyone was still immersed in sleep, Tang Ge stopped practicing and opened his eyes. Just at this time, Ma Hongjin, who was not far away, also completely fused the fourth spirit ring. When he woke up, when he saw Tang Ge, he stood up excitedly. "Boss Tang, I am also a soul sect now. It's just a mere soul sect, it's not a slap in front of me. What's there to be happy about?" Tang Ge patted the dust on his body, stood up, and couldn't help curling his lips. As soon as he said this, Ma Hongjin, who was still extremely excited, suddenly lost his mood. He scratched his head, full of disappointment, and said, "Sure enough, the distance from Boss Tang is getting farther and farther. Okay, now that the soul ring has been fused, let me show you your fourth soul ability first." Hearing Tang Ge's urging, Ma Hongjin nodded immediately, and stopped thinking about it. Then on the spot, he directly released his martial soul and 4 soul rings, 2 yellow and 2 purple. The third soul skill, Soaring Phoenix Wings, but Ma Hongjin didn't rush to use the fourth soul ability, but used the third soul ability first. This is a flying soul skill. When a pair of flaming wings appeared behind him, there was only a chirping sound, and the whole person soared into the air in an instant. It wasn't until Ma Hongjin floated in mid-air that he finally used his fourth soul ability. Phoenix howling to the sky, a loud shout came out of Ma Hongjin's mouth immediately. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 247, Flender's Divine Assist. Accompanied by loud shouts, a circle of crimson flames gushed out from Ma Hongjin in mid-air, looking very mighty and domineering. Then he saw a flap of wings behind him, and the whole person clenched his fists and swooped down, hitting the ground next to the corpse of the Earth King with his fist boom. Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion. The air ripples burned by the flames directly formed wind waves, which rushed towards all directions quickly. Under the finally cracked ground, another stream of magma rushed out and turned into a long column of flames, which then emerged from under the corpse of the Earth King, and rushed into the sky instantly against it. The terrifying power was released, tearing the body of the Earth King into pieces in an instant. Even the fresh blood gushing out of its body boiled and directly turned into blood mist, which gradually dissipated in the air. Such a huge movement naturally alarmed everyone who was resting in the tent. When everyone rushed out one after another, they immediately saw the scene of the long pillar of flames soaring into the sky, and Ma Hongjin, who was posing beside the pillar with a proud face. Obviously he is still very satisfied with the power of the fourth soul ability he just acquired. And Tang San and the others breathed a sigh of relief when they confirmed that there were no more spirit beasts appearing, and then became curious about Ma Hongjin's fourth spirit ability. So as soon as the long pillar of flames subsided, they couldn't wait to walk over. Among them, Oscar couldn't help asking, "Fatty, your fourth soul ability looks quite powerful. How is it? Is it easy to absorb?" "It's easy to absorb. I've already done it in an hour, and the rest of the time is completely resting." Hearing Oscar's question, after Ma Hongjin stood up from the ground, he straightened his messy hair and said in an unusually relaxed manner. As a result, as soon as he finished speaking, Liu Erlong, who was not far away, snorted. "Easy? If it weren't for Tang Ge's previous attack that completely made the King of the Earth give up his struggle and choose to sacrifice the soul ring, you fat boy thought it would be so easy to absorb it." Erlong is right. If the soul beast doesn't have deep resentment when it is killed, it will be relatively easy to absorb it. At this time, Yu Zhiagang also suddenly spoke. And then he told everyone about a set of theories about soul rings that he had studied. After listening, everyone suddenly realized. Ma Hongjin was embarrassed and wanted to find a crack in the ground to get in. Bragging blows out the ditch. Even Oscar ignored him, and ran directly to Tang Ge's side, and said expectantly, "For my sausage's sake, my fourth spirit ring will get rid of you, Boss Tang. Don't worry, it will be there soon." Tang Ge smiled and nodded. Oscar's eyes lit up, and he wanted to say something more, but Flender had already opened his mouth and started urging. "Okay, since everyone is done, everyone should wash up quickly, and continue on their way after breakfast." The dean spoke. Tang San and the others could only follow through. So after half an hour passed, the people who had packed up went to the depths of the Sunset Forest again, continuing to look for suitable soul beasts. But it didn't take long before they ran into trouble again. Accompanied by the appearance of the pink poisonous gas, nearly 1,000 scorpion-like soul beasts named Pink Lady quietly surrounded Flender and his party. There was a continuous rustle sound when the dead leaves were stepped on, which made everyone nervous. Moreover, among the nearly 1,000 Pink Lady soul beasts, there's even a Pink Lady mutated from Pink Lady, whose soul power has been cultivated for more than 3,000 years. In normal times, facing the siege of so many spirit beasts, even with Flender, Liu Erlong, and Zhao Wuji here, it would take a lot of effort. Even because of the vision of the pink poisonous mist, they could only choose to retreat in the end. But now because Tang Ge was there, things became much easier. Before Tang San could use his purple demon eyes, Flender said very easily, "Everyone stay where you are and don't move, just leave everything to Tang Ge to solve, depend on." Child labor has started again. Hearing Flender's arrangement, Tang Ge couldn't help but rolled his eyes. But he didn't refuse either. After a person walked out of the team, he flicked his fingers, and the mountain and river domain was released silently. In the domain, all movements were immediately invisible. Especially the pink girl hiding in the herd of soul beasts was clearly sensed by Tang Ge. He turned his head and smiled at Oscar. "Xiaoyao, you have your 4th spirit ring, really?" Oscar's eyes lit up, and he was about to continue asking, but the scene that happened next made him completely shut up, his face full of envy. So are others. Among them, the only one who was shocked was Liu Erlong. When she saw that Tang Ge didn't even release the soul ring, but when the weird black and white light emerged from under her feet, countless small black and white swords 1 foot long turned into a rain of swords and flew out puff puff, puff puff. Accompanied by bursts of ear-piercing air explosions, these small black and white swords with thousands of rips completely avoided the Shrek Academy crowd, and flew into the pink poisonous mist with black and white light and shadow. Then came bursts of sharp painful hisses. If you look carefully, you can even see the pink poisonous mist that permeates the surroundings. Amidst the flickering black and white light and shadow, there are huge bodies that explode into blood mist one after another. This battle was the first time Liu Erlong saw it. The destructive aura that leaked out when the small black and white swords passed by her side made even control her heart palpitate. Could it be that the soul skills of the 10-year soul ring cannot be achieved? For a moment, Liu Erlong couldn't help looking at Flender, who was on the side, took a deep breath and asked, "Boss Fu, what is the name of Tang Ge's soul skill?" Tai Chi Sword Formation, a powerful soul skill that can be used both offensively and defensively. When Flender, who was appreciating the soul skills released by Tang Ge, heard Liu Erlong's question, he immediately replied with a smile. Then he seemed to think of something, and said another sentence. "Of course, this is only Tang Ge's 4th soul skill, only, the 4th soul ability is so strong. The opponent's 5th and 6th soul skills." Regarding Flender's answer, Liu Erlong was stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help but fell into a strong shock. As for Flender, seeing Liu Erlong's stunned appearance, he seemed a little cute. He even thought to himself, "Tang Ge, you're Dean. Although I don't know why you like to pretend and push so much, but I have worked very hard to help you pretend and push in front of others. So, you must take care of that matter." Thinking this way, seeing that the thick pink poisonous mist around him was rapidly disintegrating, Flender laughed and shouted again. "Tang Ge, a little warm-up is enough, but don't kill all these spirit beasts, leave some for Tang San and the others, so that they have a chance to attack." End of this chapter. Chapter 248 Fragrance Attracts Soul Beast. Originally, it was nothing for Tang Ge to make a move, but the 8 of them, Tang San and Daimyo Bei, were happy to sit back and enjoy the success. Especially Oscar began to wait for the soul beast suitable for him to be sent to him on his own initiative. But as soon as Flender's words came out, black lines suddenly appeared on Tang San's foreheads, and his heart was filled with speechlessness. What does it mean to leave a little bit for us, so that we have a chance to make a move? Do we look that much like people who are greedy for such a small gain? If you have the ability, Dean, let Tang Ge revive all the soul beasts that were killed. Even without Tang Ge's action, the 8 of us can kill these soul beasts, not far away. Tang Ge, who was using the 4th soul skill Tai Chi Sword Formation to slay the pink girl's soul beast, didn't know about Flender's previous divine assist. But in his mind, there was a system prompt to get the shock value. Originally, Tang Ge wanted to make persistent efforts and continue to show his hidden strength, but unexpectedly, he heard Flender's shout. He firmly disagreed with what Flender said about warming up a little bit. After all, they are just a group of low-grade soul beasts. With his current real strength, even if he only used the Tai Chi Sword Array, it would only take him a dozen or so breaths to burst out with all his strength. How do you warm up with this little time? But one thing Flender said was right. Tang Ge felt that he couldn't go too far, and he really had to give Tang San and the others a chance to display their strength. So he urged countless flying swords to completely break through the pink poisonous mist covering the surroundings, and after picking out the pink lady hiding in the group of pink girls with one sword, he immediately retracted the Tai Chi sword formation. Turning to look at Tang San and the others, Tang Ge smiled and urged, "Don't waste time, I'll leave the rest to you." When these words were spoken, the 8 people were completely stimulated. In the end, before Daimyo Bei could make a move, Ma Hongjin, who had just obtained the 4th spirit ring, couldn't wait to use the 3rd spirit ability Phoenix Wings to the sky again. While flying towards the pink empress who had just fallen to the ground, he shouted even more. "Third brother, help me." Tang San, who had already cooperated tacitly with his companions, heard Ma Hongjin's words, and instantly understood the other party's intentions, so at the same time a green light ball flew out of his palm. Along with Ma Hongjin, the green light group charged towards the pink lady. Seeing the fiery red light rushing towards her, Pink Empress obviously felt a strong death crisis. Her eyes couldn't help revealing the color of panic. But before it could dodge, the green light cluster that came one step ahead suddenly exploded, turning into a spider web and covering it directly. On the spot, the pink lady was bound in place by the spider web. Immediately afterwards, Ma Hongjin used his 4th soul skill Phoenix Roaring Sky Strike again. Accompanied by the loud and clear sound of the phoenix cry, the pink lady was directly shot up into the sky by the pillar of flame light. By the time it hit the ground again, it had completely turned dark red and emitted an unpleasant burnt smell. However, because Ma Hongjin finally withdrew a little bit of strength, the pink lady didn't die, but there was only a gasp left. In the distance, Yu Zhigang saw this and immediately urged Oscar. "What are you doing in a daze? Tang Ge's right, this pink empress is very suitable for you, hurry up and kill it, and take its soul ring." Oscar already couldn't wait. So hearing Yu Zhiagang's urging, he immediately rushed over and took out the dagger, directly ending Pink Empress' life. After a purple soul ring condensed from the body of the Pink Empress, Oscar's eyes were filled with excitement, and he sat cross-legged and began to absorb and fuse it. The eyes of Zhu Ziuqing and the others who had not obtained the soul ring showed envy. Among them, Ning Rongrong ran up to Tang Ge and said expectantly, "Tang Ge, help me catch a soul beast anytime, don't worry, start preparing now." Tang Ge felt that Ning Rongrong's question was really timely. He smiled and looked directly at Flender not far away. "Dean, our way of finding soul beasts like this is too slow, why don't you let me provide a faster way, huh? Do you have a solution?" Hearing Tang Ge's words, Flender suddenly showed surprise on his face. The eyes of others also moved to Tang Ge. Tang Ge didn't answer, but made a move with his right hand, and a fairy medicine appeared in his hand. It is the delicate fragrance and kilo fairy grass. Seeing this fairy grass, Tang San's eyes lit up first, and then his face became worried again. "Third brother, what's the matter?" On the side, seeing the change in Tang San's face, Xiao Wu couldn't help but worry. Tang San took a deep breath and said, "Yaoxiang Kilo Xiankeo has a strong restraint effect on all kinds of poisonous fog, but at the same time the fragrance it emits will attract the attention of spirit beasts. If the fragrant Kilo immortal grass is taken out for too long, it will eventually attract more powerful soul beasts, and I am afraid that we and the 3 teachers will not be able to handle it at all." He didn't deliberately suppress his voice, so everyone present could hear him clearly. It turns out that grass jelly also has this effect. Everyone suddenly realized, but at the same time they became a little worried, just like what Tang San said, if they attract too powerful spirit beasts, it will not be luck but disaster. Yu Zhigang frowned even more, looked at Tang San and asked, "Little San, since you know this situation, is there a solution? I remember that the poisonous mist formation set up by Senior Douluo is in this sunset forest. If we can find a formation and use it as a basis, then no matter how many soul beasts there are, we will be able to attack, you can retreat and defend. And it just so happened that I refined a lot of anti-drug pills, which can guarantee us to stay in the poisonous fog formation for 2 days." Speaking of this, Tang San's face suddenly revealed a touch of confidence. Yu Zhigang was also extremely relieved after hearing this. He nodded and said, "In that case, then follow Xiazan." But before Yu Zhigang finished speaking, Tang Ge, who had been silent all this time, suddenly interrupted. He looked at the crowd and smiled lightly. "Xiao San is indeed right, but there will be number 10-year-old soul beasts in this sunset forest. If it's just a 10,000-year soul beast, I believe that teacher Erlang's strength is enough to handle it easily. What's more, there are two soul saints here, the Dean and Mr. Zhao. Don't you still believe in the strength of the three teachers? In the end, as soon as Tang Ge questioned, Zhao Wuji was the first to jump out. He stretched out his thick arms, showed off his biceps, and said loudly, Tang Ge's right, what is a 10,000-year soul beast? The teacher is here, you are afraid of a ball. Tang Ge, just stay here, don't worry about the rest. Flender also nodded. As for Liu Erlong, she wouldn't object anymore. As the horn of killing, what she was most afraid of was fighting. In this way, as the three teachers all agreed with Tang Ge's decision, even if Tang San and Yu Zhigang objected, it would not help. End of this chapter. Chapter 249. Now that the decision has been made, Flender, Zhao Wuqi and the others immediately began to arrange a defensive formation while Tang Ge had just taken out the Yaoxiang Kilo Immortal Grass. Because after all, this time was to obtain spirit rings for the Shrek students, so before the appearance of spirit beasts over 10,000 years old, the ones of 101,000 years were left to Tang Sanqi to solve. The 7 of them stood directly on the outermost edge, resisting the first wave of soul beast attacks. Oscar is absorbing the spirit ring, so he cannot be disturbed, and can only be protected in the most central area. As an auxiliary soul master, Ningrongrong was also left here. In the middle area are Zhao Wuji, Flender, Yu Zhigang and Liu Erlong. As the main force, they will only choose to attack after 10,000-year spirit beasts appear, or when there are too many spirit beasts for Tang San and the others to resist. As for Tang Ge, who was not assigned, he was naturally in charge of using Yaoxiang Kilo Immortal Grass to attract soul beasts. Anyway, Vlad and Liu Erlong also knew a lot about his strength, so it doesn't matter whether An arranges it or not. After everything was arranged properly, Flender smiled and comforted the students when he saw the expectant and nervous look. Don't be so nervous, relax, Tang Ge, let's start. Hearing Flender's words, Tang Ge also smiled, and gently blew on the fragrant Kilo Xiankao in his hand call. When he blew lightly with divine power, the fragrance of the fragrant Kilo fairy grass that was slowly longing for the air suddenly stopped, and then an invisible wave was instantly set off. But for a moment, at the fan-shaped distribution in front of Tang Ge as the center, the air within 100 meters began to become fragrant. And this fragrance is still spreading outward. Suddenly, there were bursts of howling wolves sounded from a distance, and they were getting closer. Tang San, who was guarding the outermost area, immediately shouted after hearing it, there are spirit beasts appearing, everyone is ready. Remember, if it is not a suitable spirit beast for you, try to drive it away as much as possible. Mu Bei, you go to the front line. Zhu Qing, flank support. The others try their best to maintain their strength, and they will help them when they need it. Just at this time, there were already more than a dozen ghost wolves whose soul age was only a few hundred years old, and their blue wolf eyes were greedily staring at the fairy grass in Singer Tang. They felt that if they devoured this fairy grass, it would be of great help to them. Seeing these ghost wolves appear, Dai Mu Bei laughed and rushed over. It's just a dozen or so wolf cubs. I can get rid of them by myself without your hands. Accompanied by the possession of the martial soul evil-eyed white tiger, 4 soul rings, 2 yellow and 2 purple, appeared all over his body. As soon as he rushed into the pack of nether wolves, he unleashed a powerful attack. Boom, 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 boom. I saw one after another phantom shadows of tiger claws glowing in the air, and where they landed, the ghost wolf that had just rushed over suddenly flew out with a howl. In the end, following Dai Mu Bei's white tiger fierce light wave, among the dozen or so ghost wolves, the wolf king, who was nearly 1,000 years old, was instantly killed. Seeing the boss being killed, coupled with the suppression of the white tiger's breath, as soon as the remaining ghost wolves got up from the ground, they turned around and fled into the forest ahead with their tails between their legs. It's just a dozen wolf cubs, eh? Seeing this scene, Dai Mu Bei, who had just put away his attack, couldn't help but speak with pride. But before he could finish speaking, a cold girl's voice suddenly sounded in his ears, accompanied by the howling wind. Be careful, another soul beast has appeared. Puff puff puff. The person who suddenly opened his mouth to remind Dai Mu Bei was Zhu Xiuqing. Before Dai Mu Bei could react, she, who was standing guard on one side, seemed to have sensed something, jumped up and rushed forward. Before the man landed, he used his martial spirit and spirit ring. At the same time, accompanied by the strong fluctuation of soul power, Zhu Xiuqing yelled softly, 100 claws of the netherworld, puff puff, puff puff. But for a moment, Zhu's Huking, who had the nether civet spirit, swung out sharp claws one after another, directly sealing the space in front of her. Under the howling wind, an extremely fast tiger-shaped soul beast was forced to stop immediately. This is a fierce tiger with a pitch-black body, only a white king pattern on its forehead, and its body length exceeds 3 meters. Behind, Uzziah Gang, who was standing in the second guard circle, saw this tiger-shaped soul beast, and said directly, "This is a ghost tiger, good at speed, and its talent is shadow clone. Everyone pay attention, ghost tiger?" Tang San, who was in charge of tactical arrangements, heard the teacher's words, his eyes lit up, and he immediately gave the order. Zhuking and Yuchen are ready to attack Ghost Tiger immediately after I make a move. Immediately after seeing his martial spirit and spirit ring appear, along with the fluctuation of his spirit power, thick and long blue-silver grass vines instantly rose from the ground, rushing directly towards the Ghost Tiger. And at this moment, Ghost Tiger also used his innate ability Shadow Clone. Originally blocked by Zhu's Huking with another 100 claws, it split into 3 in an instant with the flickering of its huge body, and each scattered. However, there were still 2 Ghost Tiger clones that couldn't dodge in time, and were instantly restrained by the blue-silver vines activated by Tang San. Seeing this scene, Zhu's Huking, who was already prepared, immediately used her third soul skill. Netherworld Slash. After she put her hands together on top of her head, the claw blades on her 10 fingers quickly fused together, and after the soul power was injected into it, it became a sharp blade about a foot long. Then Zhu's Huking slashed down, and the pitch-black sharp blade came out of his hand immediately, and ruthlessly hit one of the bound ghost tigers. At the same time, Lin Yuchen in the distant team also launched an attack. A sharp long arrow glowing with green light spun rapidly and made a sound of poof poof and poof piercing through the air, and pierced fiercely on Ling a ghost tiger boom, boom. Accompanied by 2 deafening bangs, the 2 ghost tigers that Tang San used the blue-silver vine to comfort collapsed and disappeared at the same time. These 2 are actually clones. But Tang San didn't seem surprised at all. Following the activation of Ziji Demon Eyes, 2 solid rays of light shone forward, and Ghost Tiger's real body was instantly invisible. At the same time, because his purple demon eyes were also full of mental attacks, the moment Ghost Tiger's real body appeared, its huge body immediately froze in place. Seeing this scene, Tang San immediately shouted, "Daimyo Bei, don't worry, this Ghost Tiger is handed over to me." Daimyo Bei, who was almost ashamed because of the negligence just now, wanted to do it a long time ago. When he heard Tang San's shout at this moment, he immediately activated his soul power at the soul ancestor level. Accompanied by surging soul power pouring continuously into the 4th soul ring, starlight flickered on Daimyo Bei's head for a moment. The moment he accumulated his soul power to the extreme, he shouted loudly. The 4th soul skill, White Tiger Meteor Shower, boom, 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 boom. In an instant, the starlight that appeared above Daimyo Bei's head condensed into fist-sized golden balls of light, falling from the sky like a meteor shower. Under the deafening bang, all these golden light spheres bombarded the ghost tiger's body. End of this chapter. Chapter 250,000 Years Soul Beast, the crisis is coming. When Ghost Tiger's real body was discovered, Daimyo Bei directly used the 4th spirit ability. In order to prevent this soul beast from counterattacking before it died, under Tang San's arrangement, Mo Hongjin also intervened in the battle. So no matter how powerful the Ghost Tiger is, no matter how fast it is, it won't help, but it was completely overwhelmed by the successive soul skills in an instant. The deafening loud noise followed continuously. Liu Erlong, who was not far behind, saw this scene, and immediately praised, "Boss Fu, I haven't seen you for more than 10 years. I didn't expect that your strength is not very good, but your ability to train students has improved a lot. These few students have good talents and cooperate with each other so tacitly. It seems that there is a great hope of winning the championship of the Soul Master Academy competition this time." These words were meant to praise Flender, but Flender felt uncomfortable after hearing it. Co-authoring his current strength is underestimated by women. It's just that it was Liu Erlong who said this. Even if Flender had 100 dissatisfaction, he could only think about it in his heart. But he said ashamedly, "I can't help it. How can I compare with Erlong Mei with my talent? So when I get old and can't walk anymore, I'm afraid I'll have to rely on you, Erlong Mei, to protect me." And I'm not the only one who trained Tang San and the others so well. Xiao Gang also played a big role in this. But as soon as Flender finished speaking, Yu Xiaogang suddenly said, "Stop talking about this, another soul beast has appeared, as predicted." Just when Daimyo Bei and Tang San had just one Zhu Zhuking's suitable spirit beast Ghost Tiger, another 7 or 8,000 year level spirit beasts were attracted by the scent of the fragrant kilo fairy grass. Among the 8,000-year-old soul beasts, 3 are the most powerful. They are the 4,000-year-old mandala snake, the 5,000-year-old man-faced demon spider and the 7,000-year-old scaled beast. Among them, the scale beast has a strong defense because of its rough skin and thick flesh, and its threat is comparable to that of a 10,000-year soul beast. Even Tang San and the others couldn't help becoming tense when they saw these 8 spirit beasts appear. Fortunately, the 3 of Flunder knew the abilities of the 7 of them, so they didn't let the 7 little guys face the attack of the 8 soul beasts. So he directly opened his mouth to range, Tang Ge, put away the Yaoxiang Kilo immortal grass, and deal with the soul beasts in front of you first. Erlong Mei, I will leave the scaled beast and Datira snake to you. Zhao Wuji, you deal with the man-faced demon spider. Just leave the rest to me. Rongrong, help the 3 of us increase our soul power. Hearing Flender's words, Rongrong immediately summoned the 9 treasures glazed tile pagoda, and colorful halos fell on the 3 of Flender. After getting the soul skill boost, the 3 of Flanders immediately felt that their strength had fully doubled. Among them, Liu Erlong was the first to rush out without any hesitation. As she used the martial spirit fire dragon, a powerful dragon, Wheaton, was released from himself. Under the pressure of the blood, the 5,000-year-old mandala snake suddenly revealed fear in its vertical pupils. Immediately without waiting for it to react, Liu Erlong, who had activated his martial soul avatar impressively, swung his tail with a divine dragon, and directly sent the mandala snake flying. Then she sent Wuhan to protrude the dragon's claws from mid-air, clasped it on the back of the scaled beast, grabbed it and flew towards the direction of the Datira snake that had just been shut out. But after a while, bursts of deafening roars caused by fierce fighting continued to pass over. At the same time, Zhao Wuji also used his martial soul avatar to fight the man-faced demon spider. The remaining 5 soul beasts are all 2 or 3,000 year old. Flender was about to rush out. Tang San, who had just retreated back, couldn't help asking, "Dean, what about us? Stay here, together with Daimyo Bei, Ma Hongjin and the others to protect Zhu Zhuking and Oscar to absorb the spirit ring." Tang Ge also stayed. After finishing speaking, Flender directly used the martial spirit 4-eyed owl to rise into the air, and charge towards the remaining 5 spirit beasts. But no one noticed that Tang Ge pinched off another leaf and dissipated in midair before taking back the Yaoxiang Kilo immortal grass. Suddenly, the remaining fragrance in the air became stronger. A light flashed in his eyes, and he couldn't help thinking secretly, "Dean, the conditions have all been created for you, so you have to live up to it." At this time, as the 3 of Flender blocked all the 8 spirit beasts, under Yu Xiaogang's arrangement, Tang San and the others had retreated to the innermost place again. After Zhu Zhuking killed Ghost Tiger, he sat cross-legged like Oscar to absorb and fuse the soul ring. Because Rongrong boosted the soul skills of 3 soul masters who were at least the soul saint level at one time, the consumption was too large, and she was recovering her soul power. Although there were 3 teacher shots, Tang San, Daimyo Bei and the others still tensed up watching the thrilling battle scene in the distance, not daring to relax in the slightest. Yu Xiaogang's face was as watery as ever, extremely calm. For the appearance of these 8 soul beasts, he already had reasonable arrangements for them. So after his eyes fell on Rongrong, Yu Xiaogang said, "The scale beast focuses on defense, and it happens that Rongrong's first 3 soul skills all focus on the increase of strength and soul power, so her 4th soul ring can be chosen, scale beast, in order to increase the ability of defense. Xiao-san, although you have chosen the man-faced demon spider for your 3rd spirit ring, you can still choose the man-faced demon spider for your 4th spirit ring. This can not only strengthen your 3rd spirit ability, but also strengthen your external spirit bone 8 spider lances again. Yuchen's martial spirit is natural, none of the 8 spirit beasts is too suitable, so you can wait." Rongrong and Lin Yuchen naturally had no objection to Yu Xiaogang's arrangement. But after Tang San thought for a while, he suddenly shook his head. "Teacher, the age of the man-faced demon spider's soul is still too young. I want to try to absorb a soul ring that is more than 10,000 years old, absorbing soul rings over 10,000 years old?" Hearing Tang San's decision, Yu Xiaogang was stunned for a moment. But just when he was about to speak to persuade the other party, he seemed to sense something, and his face suddenly became ugly. Even Tang San and the others widened their eyes all of a sudden, looking at the direction of the battle in the distance in shock. 110 meters away. At some point, Liu Erlong, who had turned into a fire dragon, had already beaten the scale beast and the Datura snake to the point of death, and had no strength to resist. But just when she was about to carry the two soul beasts back, tree roots as thick as arms suddenly protruded from the originally flat ground. As soon as these tree roots appeared, they climbed up to Liu Erlong, who was in the spirit avatar at an extremely fast speed. As they contracted violently, the terrifying confinement force was released, and Liu Erlong, who had just reacted, found that he couldn't break free in a short time. This breath. It is definitely a soul beast of the 10,000-year level. Suddenly, Liu Erlong's heart tightened, and he was ready to break free with all his strength. But what made her horrified was that, while the roots of the terrifying tree bound her, accompanied by a sharp whistling sound, another huge creature suddenly emerged from the ground. Then two jet-black long legs like sharp spears protruded from the body of this huge monster, and stabbed fiercely towards Liu Erlong's heart. There was an ear-piercing sound of puff 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 in the air. End of this chapter. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.